Chapter 453. Chief Tian, senior brother Bo Guang, was the first to enter the tower. He was so fast that he disappeared in the blink of an eye. We couldn't catch up with him at all. The attitude of the contestants was extremely respectful, but they said helplessly. Tian Bo Guang's mental strength was so high that it was impossible to surpass him. When Tian Shulin heard that, he was overjoyed. He raised his nose proudly and ignored the contestant. In front of him, these contestants were like dog feces. They were all trash. The first batch of contestants was actually the contestants with the weakest mental strength. They had only climbed to the 6th floor. After they left, the second batch came. There were about 20 of them. They supported each other, their faces pale, and they felt weak all over. "Hey, you guys, have you seen my grandson Bo Guang?" Tian Shulin immediately stopped them. He put his hands behind his back and asked majestically. No one dared to look at him directly. Chief Tian, senior brother Bo Guang, is a genius among geniuses. We can't catch up with his footsteps, but he should have climbed to the 10th floor. A contestant replied very carefully, afraid that he would say something wrong and make Tian Shulin unhappy. Tian Shulin waved his hand and let the second batch leave. This time, he was ecstatic and laughed in his heart. As expected of my grandson Bo Guang. The light spot that reached the 12th floor was most likely him. This time, Tian Shulin's confidence was greatly increased, but he did not dare to be careless. He waited at the exit. The next moment, the third batch of contestants appeared. However, this time there was only one person. It was Lin Feng, who had reached the 9th floor but could not go any further. Looking at Lin Feng, Tian Shulin frowned and hesitated to speak. At this time, Yao Lao walked up first and asked anxiously, "Lin Feng, which floor did you reach?" "Deputy Chief Tian, I'm not talented. I only reached the 8th floor," Lin Feng said modestly, but he was very proud of himself. His requirements were not high. It was not easy to reach the 8th floor. Among all the contestants, only he had done it. Moreover, he had done his best. As soon as Lin Feng finished speaking, he was praised by many people around him. As expected of Qi Yang's disciple. Very good. Yao Lao nodded. No matter what, it was Qi Yang's glory. Then, he asked, "Have you seen Qin Hao?" "Yes." At the mention of Qin Hao, Lin Feng was quite excited. He then briefly told Yao Lao about their encounter. "If it wasn't for junior brother Qin Hao, I might not have been able to break through successfully. Fortunately, he helped me. I'm now a 4-star mortal saint. Junior brother Qin Hao has also surpassed me and climbed to the 9th layer." Whoosh! As soon as these words were spoken, the crowd went into an uproar. Tian Shulin instantly became incomparably nervous, and his eyelids twitched. Qin Hao had actually climbed to the 9th level. From the looks of it, it was still uncertain who would reach the 12th level in the end. Although he was nervous, Tian Shulin was still extremely confident in Tian Bo Guang. The dot of light that appeared on the 12th floor was definitely his grandson. After Lin Feng finished speaking, he also retreated. His words caused quite a stir, and it also whetted the crowd's appetite, making them look forward to it. After Lin Feng went down, Sword Young Master stepped out. Tian Shulin blocked him with a quick step and hurriedly said, "Little Sword, which level did you climb to?" Reporting to the headmaster, "I climbed to the 9th level." Sword Young Master cupped his hands and bowed. "Ha, not bad, not bad. You're much stronger than Qi Yang's students. Their disciples only climbed to the 8th level." Tian Shulin patted Sword Young Master's shoulder and showed off to Yao Lao beside him. He also gave Sword Young Master an encouraging look very casually. But in reality, his thoughts were not on Sword Young Master at all, so he acted carelessly and asked, "Have you seen Bo Guang?" Senior brother Bo Guang. When Sword Young Master heard this, he paused and replied, "I saw him. He was the fastest, and he entered the 10th level with Bu Xiangchen before me and senior brother Xiaoguo." "What? Our 10 Directions Academy's Bu Xiangchen really entered the 10th level? Are you sure? Hearing this, Headmaster Fong of 10 Directions Academy hurriedly walked forward, his heart thumping. Yes, I'm ashamed to say this, but Xiangchen is indeed better than me. Sword Young Master said truthfully. Perhaps it was because Bu Xiangchen had cultivated the art of charm since she was young, so her spiritual grade had been strengthened to a certain extent, far surpassing an ordinary person, and even surpassing a genius like Sword Young Master. Ha ha! Headmaster Fong laughed heartily and let out a deep breath. The stone in his heart had finally been lifted. Although Wang Gui had died in 10 Directions Academy, there was still another genius. He decided that when he returned, he would definitely reward Bu Xiangchen greatly. Then have you seen Qin Hao? Yao Lao asked Sword Young Master at this time. All right, you can go now. Without giving Sword Young Master a chance to answer, Tian Shulin waved his hand and sent him away. Although he also wanted to know the answer, he was very unhappy with Yao Lao. Since Yao Lao wanted to know, Tian Shulin would not let him know. Yes. Sword Young Master responded and retreated with a cold face. He was the Sword King's successor, but he was ordered around by Tian Shulin and was not even given a reward. Sword Young Master was too lazy to say it. He was afraid that if he said it, Tian Shulin would be scared out of his wit. After all, Qin Hao had brought Xiaogua from the 9th floor to the 10th floor. But Sword Young Master was forever stuck in the same place. Medicine Jar, you should give up now. Even if Qin Hao reached the 10th floor, he's still not a match for my family's Bo Guang. Leave obediently now and don't be dragged down by Qin Hao and be ridiculed by everyone. Leave some dignity for yourself. Tian Shulin looked at Yao Lao with a deep voice. His heart longed for Yao Lao to leave. If he did not leave, Tian Shulin would not be able to use his fists and legs to brutally suppress Qin Hao. Old man will never give up until the last moment. Yao Lao secretly clenched his fists in his sleeves. In fact, he wanted to say that even if Qin Hao really lost at the last moment, he could not let Tian Shulin do as he pleased. Senior brother. Ouyang Hong walked to Yao Lao's side with an anxious expression. Regarding this, Yao Lao remained silent and chose to wait quietly. Tian Shulin saw this and sneered again. Let's see how long you can remain calm. At this time, someone stepped out of the Yao ceiling pagoda again. It was the exhausted Bu Xiangchen. Dean, I'll do my best. Her voice was weak, and she seemed very unwilling. Just a little bit more and she could have reached the 11th floor like Tian Shulin. I know. Your performance was very good. After returning to the academy, I'll immediately apply to the inner court for a high-grade cultivation technique suitable for you. Dean Shifeng stroked his beard with a smile and looked at Bu Xiangchen with admiration. Why did he not realize that the third princess from the Heavenly Dragon Empire was so outstanding? But it was not too late to realize it now. He decided to properly nurture Bu Xiangchen in the future. Little Xiangchen, have you seen our Qiyang University's Qin Hao? Oh, an old man's disciple, Xiaogua. Chapter 454. Bu Xiangchen lowered her head in fear. Her voice trembled as she replied, Senior Ouyang Hong, this junior saw the two of them. At that time, this junior was with, Master, don't worry. Aren't I out now? Before she could finish, Xiaogua had already walked out of the pagoda. He pinched his ears and smiled sheepishly at Ouyang Hong. In an instant, the crowd was in an uproar. Everyone looked very anxious. Stinking brat, you worried me to death. Ouyang Hong grabbed Qi Xiaogua's shoulders and looked him up and down. Seeing that Qi Xiaogua was not injured but just a little tired, Ouyang Hong felt relieved and asked, Which floor did you and Qin Hao reach? Where is he? According to Sword Young Master and Bu Xiangchen, Xiaogua should be with Qin Hao. Why was Qin Hao nowhere to be seen? Only Xiaogua had walked out of the pagoda alone. Could it be Qin Hao was still inside? Immediately, a large number of people looked over with anticipation. Yao Lao and Tian Shulin were especially anxious. Xiaogua faced Ouyang Hong and said slowly, "Big Brother and I went to the 10th floor together and met Bu Xiangchen and Tian Buguang." But a trace of guilt flashed across his face. Xiaogua continued, "But this disciple did his best and reached the limit. Then my big brother chased Tian Buguang to the 11th floor." "Impossible." Tian Shulin didn't give the crowd time to react. He pushed Ouyang Hong away and pointed at Qi Xiaogua's nose. "You little brat, you're deceiving the crowd with your lies. What a load of nonsense. Qin Hao will never be like my grandson and step onto the high and lofty 11th floor." As he spoke, Tian Shulin's chest heaved with anger. He couldn't tolerate Xiaogua any longer. He firmly believed that Tian Buguang was truly the #1 person. This was the natural order of things. Many of the spectators around also looked puzzled. Tian Buguang had spiritual power of the 11th rank, so there was no doubt that he would reach the 11th level. Furthermore, everyone had clearly seen that only one of the dots of light on the Yao ceiling pagoda had actually crossed the threshold of the 11th level. It was most likely Tian Buguang. In order to establish the image of Qiyang University in front of everyone, you're making up lies and distorting the fact. You're shameless to the extreme. Even so, it doesn't change the fact that Qin Hao is incompetent. He will never catch up with my grandson, Tian Shulin retorted. He even condensed a strand of his will and blasted it toward Xiaogua, preventing him from speaking again. "Why are you so excited?" Seeing this, Yao Lao took a step forward and stood in front of Xiaogua. At this moment, he was already laughing in his heart. If what Xiaogua said was true, and Qin Hao also climbed to the 11th level, then the outcome would be uncertain. It would be hard to say who would be the slave of who. He coldly looked at Tian Shulin. "I advise you to stay put. Whether what Xiaogua said is true or false, we'll know in a moment. Reality will tell us the answer." "Reality, my ass!" Tian Shulin heavily snorted from his nose. He curled his lips and proudly said, "I, Tian Shulin, am a venerable rank expert of the Tian family. Buguang inherited my excellent bloodline. He was born with a spiritual power of the 11th rank and even awakened a flame source spirit. Qin Hao wants to fight with my grandson? And he wants to beat my grandson? White sun in his dreams. Chief Tian, you have to believe it. Qin Hao really chased him to the 11th level. I saw it with my own eyes." At this moment, Bu Xiangchen stood up and said, "She was a witness. What you saw was just an illusion. Because you were defeated by my grandson, you're not satisfied and want to viciously slander him. You're deliberately colluding with Xiaogua. Do you think I can't see through it?" Tian Shulin put his hands behind his back. He didn't buy it at all. Bu Xiangchen was speechless. She had never seen such a shameless person. Not only was he the chief of Star Moon Academy, but he was also a senior. "Sister Xiangchen, what do you have to say to an old dog? Be careful of his rabies and he'll pounce on you and bite you." Xiaogua fiercely cursed. "You little bastard!" Tian Shulin went crazy on the spot. It was as if he really had rabies. His face was filled with anger. He was a venerable rank expert, the chief of Star Moon Academy. Who wouldn't treat him with respect and humility? In front of so many people, Xiaogua dared to call him a dog? Lack of discipline. With a flick of his sleeve, a gust of wind rose from the ground and wreaked havoc towards Xiaogua. The surrounding people were so frightened that they quickly dodged. The attack of a venerable rank expert was no joke. "Surname Tian, do you really treat me, old man Yao, as heir?" Yao Lao's face was filled with anger. He stretched out his withered hand and grabbed at the air. Bang! The gust of wind in front of him was crushed into pieces. Humph! Seeing this, Tian Shulin unwillingly flung his sleeve and walked to the side. He wanted to kill Xiaogua with a slap, but unfortunately, Yao Lao was there to block him. Even so, he was still muttering to himself, saying that Qin Hao had most likely died inside, and that the person who climbed to the 12th floor was undoubtedly his grandson. No one could be compared to the Tian family. Since you're so confident, do you dare to make a bet with me? Yao Lao also began to compete. Tian Shulin was too arrogant and didn't put anyone in his eyes. What's the bet? What's the bet? Tian Shulin asked. Let's bet on who climbed to the 12th floor. If it's your grandson, I'll remove him from his position as vice president. But if it's Qin Hao... Yao Lao raised his head and looked at Tian Shulin with a sharp gaze. What? Do you want me to remove my position as president of Xingyu and slap myself in the face 3 times? All right, medicine jar, you're really vicious. I'm a dignified honorable realm expert, yet you want to make me lose all my face. No, I don't need you to remove your position as president, nor do I need you to slap yourself in the face 3 times. I just want you to apologize to our Qiyang University's Xiaogua and Shifang's Buxiangchen. That's all. Yao Lao interrupted him. The surrounding people nodded and praised him. This was magnanimity. Yao Lao's demeanor was what a venerable rank expert should be like. At the same time, Buxiangchen's face was puffed up with anger. Obviously, this request was very reasonable for her. All right, I'll bet with you. Is Qin Hao going to rebel? He's just a lowly ant from the countryside. How dare he try to compete with my noble grandson? Prepare to step down. Tian Shulin nodded and agreed due to the pressure from the surrounding people. In fact, he was not worried about losing at all. This was because his grandson had the highest spiritual power. He had a strong hunch that 99% of the light spots on the 12th floor belonged to Tian Buguang. He would definitely win this bet. Chapter 455. Keep your eyes open and witness my grandson's victory with your own eyes. As for Qin Hao, he will never win. When the time comes, I want to see you strip him of his position as vice president and run back to the medical tower with your tail between your legs. And the 2 of you. Tian Shulin pointed at Xiaogua first, then at Buxiangchen. You're so young, but you're already scheming and jealous. You're obviously not as good as my grandson, but you maliciously slandered him. You want me, a venerable level powerhouse, to apologize to you 2 kids? Haha, I'm afraid you won't be able to wait your entire lives. After saying that, he put his hands behind his back and turned around. He would let reality give everyone a slap in the face and teach these ignorant fellows a lesson on how to behave. Reality would tell them that Tian Shulin's grandson was a peerless genius that was hard to come by in 10,000 years. However, almost as soon as he finished speaking, a figure covered in blood limped out of the demon subduing pagoda. Everyone was deeply shocked as soon as he showed his head. Because this person who was limping as if he had a broken leg was Tian Shulin's grandson. Tian Buguang. This. Are my eyes playing tricks on me? President Tian, quickly take a look at who's coming out. Immediately, some people called out anxiously. At this moment, Tian Shulin was still lost in his sweet dream. His back was still facing everyone, so he did not see his grandson's miserable state. Of course, it's most likely that useless Qin Hao who came out early, right? This is all within my expectations, ha ha. Hearing the horrifying screams coming from behind him, Tian Shulin nodded in satisfaction. Although he was very excited at this moment, since Qin Hao came out early, proving that Qin Hao had lost, he still did not turn around to look. He wanted to give everyone the impression that he was as steady as Mount Tai. Therefore, Tian Shulin ignored his grandson's miserable state and even wanted to laugh a little. Grandpa! Boo-hoo! In the next second, Tian Buguang cried. He had just walked out of the demon-subduing pagoda when he fell in front of everyone with a plop. His face was dejected and he had lost his fighting spirit. Thump! Tian Shulin's heart skipped a beat. He seemed to have heard his grandson's voice. Could it be that he was too excited and was hallucinating? Yes, I have to control myself. I have to suppress my excitement. Therefore, Tian Shulin remained rooted to the ground and did not even look back. Grandpa, I lost, Tian Buguang cried. Rumble! A shocking bolt of lightning struck Tian Shulin's head, and he heard his grandson's voice again. It was so clear. Could it be that this was not an illusion? At the same time, Tian Shulin also saw that there were many people around, pointing at him with strange expressions. Tian Shulin immediately came to his senses and turned around. Rumble! After looking at it, he felt as if he had been struck by lightning. In front of Tian Shulin, Tian Buguang was lying on the ground with blood all over his body, his face full of pain. Was this still his high-spirited and ambitious grandson? What happened to being a peerless monster? Bo Guang, my grandson! Tian Shulin's heart felt as if it had been ruthlessly sliced by a blade. It was extremely painful. He hurriedly extended his hand to help Tian Buguang up. At the same time, a vigorous yuan qi was also injected into Tian Buguang's body, suppressing Tian Buguang's injuries. These injuries were actually not serious. It was just that the pressure at the entrance of the 11th floor was too great, and his body was slightly damaged. The most serious injury was his left leg, which was fractured. However, Tian Shulin realized that it was fortunate that Tian Buguang had eaten a bone-refining pill in advance, so he was lucky enough to walk back. If not for the bone-refining pill, this leg would most likely be crippled in the future. What's going on? Tian Shulin suppressed the depression in his heart and asked with a serious face. According to Tian Buguang's spiritual grade, he should not be in such a sorry state. Moreover, what did he say just now? He said that he had lost? For a moment, Tian Shulin found it hard to accept. It's all because of Qin Hao. If not for Qin Hao, I would be first this time. I defeated Lin Feng, defeated Sword Prince, and left Xiaogua and Bu Xiangchen far behind. I took the lead and rushed to the 11th floor. But Tian Buguang shook his head in grief and indignation. The pressure in the tower was extremely great. Every floor steadily suppressed the corresponding spiritual grade. In order to reach the 11th floor, he did not even care about his life and climbed in. However, in the end, Qin Hao caught up and surpassed him. I was stuck at the entrance. Qin Hao went to the 12th floor. Tian Buguang's tears fell like rain. His heart was really painful. Immediately, his gaze suddenly turned fierce. He gritted his teeth and said, "Grandpa, you must kill Qin Hao. If he doesn't die, I won't live anymore." Boom. The third time, it was as if another thunderbolt had struck Tian Shulin heavily. It hit him so hard that his feet swayed, and his old body almost fell to the ground. The most outstanding descendant of the Tian family, the grandson that he, Tian Shulin, regarded as a treasure and had high hopes for, had actually lost. Holy sh*T, that's a level 11 spiritual power. Qin Hao had surpassed the spiritual grade 11 and stepped into the 12th floor. At this moment, Tian Shulin's heart was filled with mixed feelings. It was as if he had fallen from the clouds into the abyss. This huge contrast made him feel like he was better off dead. Ha ha ha, this is so satisfying. Like I said, people can create miracles, but not everyone can create miracles. Only Qin Hao from Qiyang University has this ability. Yao Lao's suppressed anger was completely released. In an instant, he looked as if he had become decades younger. His face was glowing. Ouyang Hong, who was next to him, was dumbfounded. He was deeply shocked. The person who had climbed to the 12th floor was actually Qin Hao? This was unbelievable. The tens of thousands of people who had surrounded the Yao-suppressing pagoda were all stunned, as if they had lost their souls. However, when they saw the smiles on Xiaogua and Bu Xiangchen's faces, they came to their senses. It turned out that these two children were not lying. Tian Shulin, you've lost. At this moment, Yao Lao had already walked up to Tian Shulin with a cold face. Tian Shulin's face was extremely ugly, as if he had eaten rat feces. He was at a loss. Grandpa, don't worry. The inside of the Yao-suppressing pagoda is extremely terrifying. It's not something that humans can withstand. Even with my spiritual power of the 11th rank, I can barely climb to the entrance of the 11th floor. I'm sure that Qin Hao won't be able to stay in there for long. Even if he enters the 12th floor, there's an 80% chance that he will die in there. Tian Buguang gave his grandfather a look that said, "Don't worry, Qin Hao is dead." In that case, my grandson didn't lose? Qin Hao has already died? Tian Shulin's eyes were glowing. The surprise on his face was self-evident. No, I'm sorry. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint Chief Tian. I'm not dead yet. Suddenly, a voice that Tian Buguang and Tian Shulin did not want to hear the most rang out. The voice came from above. They raised their heads and saw Qin Hao standing at the top of the demon-subduing pagoda. His hands were clasped behind his back as he faced the wind. His robes fluttered in the wind. Even though his entire body was soaked in blood, the air of arrogance he exuded was breathtaking. Crack! The fourth bolt of lightning struck, and Tian Shulin's mouth was wide open. His eyes were wide open, and he was struck so hard that he felt like roasting the heavens. Qin Hao was not dead. Not only was he not dead, but he had also come out of the pagoda. Chapter 456. He had personally experienced the pressure in the demon-banishing pagoda. It was extremely terrifying. How could Qin Hao walk out of the 12th level unscathed? Even if he did walk out, he shouldn't be so unscathed, right? At the very least, he should be limping like Tian Buguang. Oh, I know. It must be Boss Yao Lao who helped you secretly. That's why you walked out of the 12th level. Qin Hao, you're obviously cheating. I can't accept this. Everyone, come and take a look. They're too vicious. Tian Buguang looked up and glared at Qin Hao, accusing him of using underhanded means to win the competition. Once these words were spoken, Yao Lao's pupils abruptly shrank as he stared sternly at Tian Buguang. This bastard dared to tarnish his reputation. There was a lot of discussion around, but no one believed Tian Buguang's words. In fact, no one believed him. When the competition started, all the sect leaders secretly released their consciousnesses, trying to spy on the situation in the demon-banishing pagoda. However, the demon-banishing pagoda was covered by a barrier, blocking the hundreds of sage-level cultivators outside. This barrier was very strong. Everyone guessed that it was most likely set up by the Dragon Abyss Emperor. Even Yao Lao and Tian Shulin, two supremacy-level cultivators, couldn't penetrate the demon-banishing pagoda's defenses, let alone sage-level cultivators. Yao Lao wanted to help, but he didn't have the ability. It was obvious that Tian Buguang was lying and slandering a good person. In fact, when Tian Buguang said this, his grandfather, Tian Shulin, had already taken a few steps back awkwardly. Because his grandfather had already tried. Back then, he also wanted to help his grandson secretly. In the end, he couldn't even send a trace of his vitality into the demon-banishing pagoda. Look at all the seniors here. Which one of them believes you? Tian Buguang, I didn't expect you to be such a sore loser. Qin Hao looked down with his hands behind his back. When his gaze landed on Tian Buguang, it was full of disdain. At the same time, he saw Chen Wanqin smiling at him from the crowd. Her smile was full of trust. Qin Hao nodded lightly. Everything was understood without words. In fact, when everyone was worried about Qin Hao, only Chen Wanqin believed that he would win in the end. How can this be? Demon-banishing pagoda's corresponding spiritual grade. How can you walk out of the 12th level? Tian Buguang shouted in despair. He still couldn't believe it. Because I have a spiritual strength of the 13th level. Qin Hao shouted as he stretched out his right hand in front of him. Growing. 3. This was Qin Hao's spiritual will. In fact, once a person measured their spiritual grade, they no longer needed to rely on any tools to release their spiritual grade freely. To tell you the truth, not only did I pass the 12th level, but there's also a 13th level that you don't know about. At this point, Qin Hao's words came to a halt. Even if he didn't continue, he still told everyone. He successfully stepped out of the 13th level and stood at the top of the pagoda. Rumble. Everyone was shocked by Qin Hao. Spiritual strength of the 13th level. A peerless genius of the 13th level had appeared in the land of Western Liang. Qin Hao's talent was monstrous. It had been hundreds of years since Western Liang had seen such a shocking scene. When Tian Shulin showed off his grandson's 11th level spiritual strength, everyone was shocked. Qin Hao's spiritual strength was more than a few streets ahead of Tian Buguang. The two of them were not on the same level. Poor Tian Buguang wanted to crush Qin Hao, but in the end, he was just slapping himself in the face and becoming a stepping stone for Qin Hao's rise. At this moment, whether it was Tian Buguang, Tian Shulin, Yao Lao, or Ouyang Hong, even Sword Gongzi, Buxiangchen, and Xiaogua widened their eyes in shock. Spiritual strength of the 13th level. It was simply too high. Brother Qin Hao, are you still a human? Sword Gongzi said in a daze. No wonder my charm didn't work on Qin Hao. It seems like I was too arrogant. Buxiangchen looked at Qin Hao with a hint of admiration. Qin Hao was the only one who wasn't charmed by her charm. This man was too different. You're indeed my boss. Xiaogua began to act like a follower. Yes, you're right. You're indeed our boss. Yi Shuihan put his hand on Xiaogua's shoulder. He was once again conquered by Qin Hao. 10. 3. Grade. Of. Essence. God. Strength. Tian Shulin's face became extremely ugly. He gritted his teeth and spoke word by word. Every word seemed to use up all his strength. It could be said that Qin Hao, with his 13th level spiritual strength, had completely suppressed his grandson. Tian Shulin had never expected this outcome. In terms of physical strength, his grandson was no match for him. In terms of spiritual strength, his grandson was once again left in the dust by Qin Hao. At this moment, he completely understood the hatred in Tian Buguang's word. Grandpa, kill Qin Hao. If Qin Hao doesn't die, I won't live. If this person isn't eliminated, my grandson will never be able to make a name for himself. Tian Shulin clenched his fist. In his heart, he had already put Qin Hao on the list of dead people. However, today was not the day. What kind of **T competition is this? There's no fairness at all. It's too shady. Let's not compete. Buguang, go home with Grandpa. Tian Shulin glared at Qin Hao fiercely and pulled Tian Buguang to leave. Chief Tian, you seem to have forgotten something. Want to leave? How could Qin Hao let him do as he wished? He opened his arms and slowly descended from the top of the pagoda to the ground. He landed right in front of Tian Shulin. Qin Hao blocked him. I want to leave. Do you dare to stop me? Tian Shulin's face was tense. He hated Qin Hao to the core. Of course I can't stop you. However, Tian Buguang still owes me a bet. Qin Hao was not afraid of him. His voice was sonorous and powerful. Qin Hao, don't push your luck. You want me to be your slave? Give up. Relying on his grandpa's presence, Tian Buguang intended to go back on his words. Did you hear that? My grandson's words represent the will of the old man. Tian Shulin said coldly. Qin Hao laughed. Is this what Chief Tian meant by every word is a nail? How disappointing. There's one more thing that I hope you all understand. From the beginning to the end, I never thought of letting Tian Buguang be my dog. He's not worthy. At this point, Qin Hao's eyes flashed with cold killing intent. He did not need a dog. He wanted Tian Buguang's life. Brat, you're courting death. Tian Shulin was furious. Without any explanation, he raised his palm and blasted it toward Qin Hao. Tian, you've gone too far, Yao Lao shouted. Before the other party could hit Qin Hao, he also raised his palm to meet the attack. Chapter 457. Tian Shulin took a few steps back and pointed at Yao Lao. Medicine jar, do you really want to start a life-and-death battle with me over Qin Hao? So what? If you want to fight, then let's fight. Yao Lao assumed a stance. He was willing to disregard his own life for Qin Hao's sake. At the same time, the three-legged golden crow in the sky let out a loud cry. The flames on its body also buzzed and expanded to a radius of 30 meters. A Yuan Venerate and a Beast King were enough to pose a fatal threat to Tian Shulin. Grandpa, you can't do that. Tian Buguang panicked. Tian Shulin turned around abruptly and raised his hand to slap his grandson's face. However, when his palm touched Tian Buguang's face, he stopped abruptly. He couldn't bear to hit him. How could he not know that he couldn't fight Yao Lao head-on at the moment? However, it wasn't up to him now. Otherwise, he would have to bow his head and apologize to the two children in front of tens of thousands of people. Furthermore, Qin Hao wanted Tian Buguang's life. This was all Tian Buguang's fault. Medicine jar, why do you have to be so overbearing? All right, I'll apologize to the two children. Tian Shulin had no choice but to clench his fists and apologize to Xiaogua and Buxiangchen. However, his voice was very soft. What did you say? I didn't hear you clearly. Xiaogua slapped Tian Shulin's face and turned his face to the side to let Tian Shulin repeat himself. I said, I sincerely apologize for my slip of the tongue. Tian Shulin's palms were pale as he clenched his fists. I'm still too young to hear you clearly. Xiaogua took a few steps forward and extended his ear. I didn't hear you clearly either. Buxiangchen couldn't help but laugh. Old man, I'm sorry. I hope you won't lower yourself to my level. Buguang, let's go. Tian Shulin shouted loudly and immediately pulled Tian Buguang to leave. As a dignified Yuan Venerate, he felt too ashamed to continue living. Hold on. Tian Buguang and I still have a bet. Qin Hao refused to let go and blocked him again. Brat, don't fail to appreciate my kindness. I won't let you punish Buguang. Just like if you lose, the medicine jar won't let me deal with you. Everyone knows this, so why do you insist on not letting it go? Tian Shulin was really infuriated. Also, let me give you a piece of advice. After all, Chen Wanqin is still a student of Star Moon Academy. Naturally, I cannot do anything to her. But as for her master, I can abolish him with a single thought. You'd better think carefully. Tian Shulin began to threaten again. Qin Hao naturally wouldn't be threatened by him. But at this time, Chen Wanqin's heart was deeply touched by these harsh words. She couldn't help but look at Qin Hao with a bitter expression, hoping that Qin Hao would take a step back for her. Her master was a good person. After Chen Wanqin had entered the academy, she had taken good care of her. She had been as kind as a grandmother. Tian Buguang, I will temporarily entrust your life to you. If anything happens to Wanqin and her master in Star Moon Academy, what can you do? Tian Buguang interrupted Qin Hao and laughed arrogantly. Do you think you can fight your way into Star Moon Academy? Take a look at yourself first. What if I join in? Yao Lao stepped forward coldly. Tian Buguang's mouth twitched a few times. He didn't dare talk back and hurriedly hid behind his grandfather. Trash! Qin Hao shouted. Old man agrees. Tian Shulin was about to go crazy. After I return, I definitely won't do anything to Chen Wanqin's master. Furthermore, Chen Wanqin is my granddaughter-in-law. After a year, when her ice technique has reached the large success stage, she will marry my grandson and help him cultivate. That's impossible. After a year, I will leave with Wanqin. At that time, if anyone dares to stop me, I will kill them, even if the blood will flow like a river. Qin Hao replied in a lifeless voice. He was incomparably determined. Fine, I will wait for that day. I want to see what ability you have to take her away from old man and make my Star Moon Academy bleed like a river. Boguang, let's go. Tian Shulin was so angry that he gritted his teeth. He stared seriously at Qin Hao, wanting to imprint this brat's appearance into his bones. With a wave of his hand, he swept up Tian Boguang and Chen Wanqin and left. As for Qin Hao, he didn't stop them. Tian Shulin was an honorable realm expert. He couldn't force him too much. If he let him loose and fought, it would be very terrifying. Moreover, it would implicate Yao Lao. Wanqin, after a year, I will definitely bring you out. Wait for me. Looking at the ball of light flying into the distance, Qin Hao circulated his essence and shouted loudly. However, he didn't get a response from Chen Wanqin. Qin Hao wasn't depressed because he knew that Chen Wanqin's face must be blooming with a smile. She believed in Qin Hao. Brother, are we just going to let them go? Let them take Sister Wanqin away? Xiaogua pointed to the sky and said unwillingly. Enduring now is for a heavy blow in the future. Qin Hao also wanted to keep them. He could only blame himself for being too weak. However, this weakness was only temporary. After a year, he would make old man Tian pay the price for what he did today. The Rising Star competition had come to an end. Qin Hao was the well-deserved champion. Next was the award ceremony. According to the rankings, Qin Hao got the Heavenly Spirit Pearl, 100,000 medium Xian crystals, and 300,000 lower Xian crystals as he wished. Xiaogua took second place. Bu Xiangchen was third and Sword Prince was fourth. Since the man in red and Wang Gui were beaten to death by Qin Hao and Long Fun was disabled, Lin Feng was lucky enough to be promoted to fifth place. Tian Boguang should have been in the top 5. However, as soon as he left, Big Mouth Li announced that he had forfeited and deprived Xingyue Academy of the prize. This made the spectators sigh. Big Mouth Li was obviously venting for Qin Hao. As a result, the elders of Star Moon Academy did not manage to get anything. They left the arena with their disciples in a sorry state. There's one more thing. By the will of the heavens, Emperor Yi decrees. Qin Hao, the champion of the Rising Star competition and the chief disciple of Qiangbin's outer yard, will be a second-class earl of the Luoshui Empire. He can enjoy an extra imperial salary, which will be sent to Qiangbin every month. Haha, Qin Hao, congratulations to you. Oh no, look at my mouth. Congratulations to Count Qin. After Big Mouth Li finished reading the imperial edict, he walked up to Qin Hao and congratulated him. At the same time, he handed the imperial edict to Qin Hao. Boom. The crowd was shocked again. Oh my god! Qin Hao was conferred a title by the Emperor of Dragon Abyss. Wasn't this title a little too big? It wasn't just big, it was too big. Only the important ministers of the imperial court and the generals who had made great contributions in battle would be given additional titles. Titles were different from official positions. Compared to an official position, it was much more prominent and honorable. Chapter 458. My lord, isn't the title you gave Qin Hao a little too in the imperial study? Old man Huang looked at Yi Long Yuan and wanted to say that the title was indeed too big, but he didn't finish his words. Do you think it's too small? Yi Long Yuan patted his thigh, shook his head and said guiltily, It's indeed a little small. I should have made Qin Hao a first marquis. No, I should have made him a grand duke. Qin Hao was Yi Shuihen's sworn brother. It was only a matter of time before he entered the Luoshui court, and he would be entrusted with important tasks. However, it was not appropriate for Yi Long Yuan to show too much affection to Qin Hao now. Otherwise, it would be easy to arouse suspicion. It was also inconvenient for him to go out and crown him as the champion. He was not ready to recognize his son yet. Only after getting the approval of Xinque could he make public Yi Shuihan's identity as the first prince. That day would not be too far away. Yi Longyuan had found a breakthrough, which was Qin Hao. Qin Hao was Qiangbin's seed disciple. He could follow the vine to the melon and get close to Xinque again by making a fuss about him. As the emperor of the Luoshui Empire, Yi Longyuan had a wife but couldn't get close to her. He had a son but couldn't recognize him. It was quite sad. Tian Shulin was very arrogant today. If it were not inconvenient for me to take action, I would have slapped him in the face long ago. Yi Longyuan's tone was heavy and full of anger. Old man Huang nodded. His lord's consideration was correct. But it's convenient for you now. After that, he smiled shamelessly. Hearing this, Yi Longyuan also smiled. Immediately, his figure flashed and disappeared from the imperial study. He turned into a soaring aura and chased after Tian Shulin from the imperial palace. It was inconvenient for him to take action in front of Yi Shuihan. Now it was indeed convenient. After catching Tian Shulin this time, the old man screamed miserably. Luoshui Square. Qin Hao was indeed surprised that he was conferred the title of Count of Luoshui. It seemed a little too sudden. But he didn't think too much about it. It was just an earl. Qin Hao didn't think much of him. At this time, the crowd gradually dispersed after the initial shock. Qin Hao walked in front of Yao Lao. Without saying anything, he knelt down on one knee and raised his head to plead, "Vice President, please save my master." Yao Lao was actually a supreme sage almighty who had hidden his cultivation. Then, in the medicine tower of the outer court, there must be a lot of peerless herbs. Maybe there were herbs that could awaken the Korxian. "You brat, get up." Yao Lao couldn't take it. Ouyang Hong had told him everything that had happened during the competition. Qin Hao had never knelt before the heavens or the earth. He had only knelt before his master. He was willing to bend his waist and kowtow to his brother. "You are the pride of our Qiyang Academy. You have won many battles and won the championship. Today you have brought great glory to the Academy." It's just that, Yao Lao's tone was very emotional. It could be said that Qin Hao's fame had spread throughout the world after a single battle. Today, the high-ranking officials of Luo River, the big shots of the military, and over 1,000 sect masters were all witnesses. However, it was not that easy to awaken the Korxian. He had already heard about this from Yuning Chong. "I can use my means to refine the 9 revolutions soul return pill for you. Unfortunately, I don't have any of those herbs." Yao Lao had planned to reward Qin Hao handsomely. Now, he couldn't even satisfy his small request. He felt a little guilty. "Then, please let me enter the Qiyang Medicine Valley. I hope that the Vice President will agree." Qin Hao continued. His eyes were very serious. He would never give up on the Korxian. "Don't call me Vice President. I don't feel comfortable hearing it. Get up first." Yao Lao pulled Qin Hao up with one hand. He didn't reveal his identity in the past because he was afraid of this kind of estrangement. The Medicine Valley only opens once every 3 years. There are still 2 years until the next time. When the time comes, the top disciples of the 4 major academies will form teams to enter to search for the herbs. There are many dangers inside. It's not something you can imagine. I can give you a spot in advance, but you have to consider it carefully. Don't treat life as child's play. Yao Lao had the power to supervise the Medicine Valley. His words carried weight. His words instantly put Qin Hao at ease. However, at the same time, he also told him that those who entered the Medicine Valley were the top disciples of the 4 major academies. They were all seniors who had cultivated for more than 10 years or even decade. Their strength was even stronger than the inner academy elders. Almost all of them were almost at the king level. Qin Hao had just entered the Qiyang Medicine Valley for less than half a year. It was really too much. To put it bluntly, it was like throwing an egg against a rock. Yao Lao was really worried about him. For example, The sacred medicine that was given to Qin Hao was brought out from the Medicine Valley by a disciple of the Qi Yang Medicine Valley. However, that disciple was seriously injured and passed away soon after. I'm not afraid, Qin Hao said seriously. 2 years? That was enough. In 2 years, Qin Hao had enough confidence to raise his strength to the king level. This was because he had a celestial spirit pearl in his hand. All right, I'll let you go. Yao Lao saw that he couldn't stop him, so he patted Qin Hao on the shoulder. In addition, the Outer Academy will give the freshmen 2 months off so that the new disciples can go home and report that they are safe. However, most of the disciples are unwilling to go back because it will affect their cultivation. Qin Hao, you and Little Melon are now strong enough to enter the Inner Academy. I suggest that you stay too. At this time, Ouyang Hong took over the topic. No, I want to go home. I want to go home too. Almost instantly, Qin Hao and Xiaogua spoke at the same time. No matter how important it was not as important as going home. Moreover, the Daqin prefecture was facing the biggest crisis in history. Yao Lao and Ouyang Hong were startled by their answers. Then, they nodded their heads in praise. In that case, you can go back. Remember, you only have 2 months. When you come back, immediately report to the Inner Academy. Now, you are already disciples of the Inner Academy. Yao Lao waved his hand and a brilliance enveloped Qin Hao and Xiaogua. Suddenly their clothes changed. They changed into the red attire of the Qi Yang Inner Academy disciples. They looked very fierce and had a chivalrous aura. Dean Ouyang, I have a presumptuous request. I hope you can lend me your flying artifact. Qin Hao was eager to go home and went straight to the point. What? You want my flying artifact? Ouyang Hong bluff. Old Man's flying artifact symbolized his identity as the Dean of the Outer Academy. Its speed was comparable to that of a king stage, and it was very expensive to make. Without enough strength, what if someone snatched it away? That would be a huge loss. Ahem. In the next second, Yao Lao coughed and looked at Ouyang Hong. His eyes seemed to be saying, You don't need me to teach you what to do you? Master. At this time, Xiaogua also pulled Ouyang Hong's sleeve with a pleading look. Okay, I'll lend it to you. Ouyang Hong gritted his teeth and raised his palm. The huge flying artifact landed on the ground from the space ring. Suddenly, it shone with a strong aura of treasure. Qin Hao had just won the championship for Qiyang and was highly regarded by Yao Lao. Moreover, Ouyang Hong had just accepted Xiaogua as his disciple. Under the pressure of his disciple and eldest senior brother, he had no choice but to lend it to him. Thank you, Dean Ouyang. Thank you, Master. You're so nice. Mwax. Chapter 459. Yao Lao smiled. With a casual flick of his finger, a strand of vital energy shot from his fingertip into the spaceship. If Qin Hao was in any danger, he could use this strand of vital energy to lock onto his position. Then, he could directly tear the void and teleport to Qin Hao's side. Just like when Tian Shulin saved Tian Buguang, although it would consume a lot of his energy. At this moment, Yao Lao also noticed the anxiety in Qin Hao and Xiaogua's eyes. Therefore, he had to take precautions. Go and return early. I will send an order to the inner court to arrange your accommodations in advance. Yao Lao waved his hand and settled everything. Then, he let Qin Hao leave. Boss, take me with you to show off and fly. I have nothing to do. Brother Qin Hao, I also want to play with you. As soon as Qin Hao took a step, Yi Shuihan and Nalanli chased after him and begged. This is not appropriate. An unexpected voice rang out. Everyone turned around and saw that it was Old Man Huang from the outer court. This time, Old Man Huang came with the elders to watch the competition. However, after arriving, he disappeared. Why did he suddenly appear now? Greetings, Vice President Dean Ouyang. Old Man Huang bowed and said with a smile. After seeing Old Man Huang, Yi Shuihan's face drooped. He knew that he couldn't leave. Since he was young, every time he wanted to go on a long journey, he was stopped by Old Man Huang. Shuihan, you stay in the Imperial City. I have some important things to do when I go back. Qin Hao could see that Old Man Huang didn't want Yi Shuihan to leave. Therefore, he patted his shoulder. Old Man Huang saw this and was overjoyed. He gave Qin Hao a thumbs up. This kid was really smart. Brother Qin Hao nailingly tugged at Qin Hao's clothes. She was very reluctant to part with him. She was used to relying on him. Big brother, why don't we let her go back with us? Xiaogua looked at Nailingly shyly. He seemed to be in love. But at this moment Naransu spoke. She pulled Nailingly and said seriously, Sister, don't forget that we have important things to do. There was a hint of warning in his words. Nailingly, 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 and Nailingly, Nailingly. Of Nailingly's mother. Only that person had the ability to save their mother. She immediately apologized to Qin Hao. I'm sorry, Qin Hao. Ever since Xiaoli came to the Scarlet Sun Institute, she has been troubling you, but this time, I'm afraid I can't go with you. Okay. Qin Hao's eyes lit up. He had already seen that Naransu was hiding something. He patted Nailingly's head and said, Nailingly, be good. Wait for me at the school. I'll bring you delicious food. It's famous food from my hometown. Really? Nailingly clasped her hands. Her eyes were twinkling. She was a foodie. Naransu was speechless. Yao Lao, let's go. I'm indebted to you for taking care of me ever since I came to Qiyang. I'll never forget your kindness. Qin Hao didn't waste any more time. He held Xiaogua's hand and jumped onto the spaceship. A dazzling light suddenly bloomed. The spaceship rose from the ground and rose into the sky. Then, it turned into a powerful stream of light and flew towards the southwest. That was their hometown, Heaven's Wall City. Qin Hao was very grateful to Yao Lao. He cherished their relationship as a teacher and a friend. Sir, wait. Wait for Xing Er. As soon as Qin Hao left, Xing Er, who was dressed in snow-white clothes, rushed into the field. She was chased by an anxious Mr. Hai. Looking at the stream of light that disappeared in the sky, Xing Er's face was filled with grievance. Why couldn't you wait for me? I'm here to give you a surprise. Yao Lao murmured. He was immediately attracted by the girl in front of him. He could sense that the girl's physique was extraordinary. Miss Xing Er. Naransu smiled and immediately went up to greet her. Then, she exclaimed, It's only been a few days and you've already advanced to master. Hello, Sister Zhu. Hello, Sister Shaoli. Xing Er's mind was not on the two of them at all. She looked very unhappy. She had gone from a powerless young girl to a grand master in such a short amount of time. Her cultivation speed was so fast that even Xing Er herself was shocked. Then, she was very excited. She wanted to share this joy with Qin Hao. She had come to Qin Hao to make Qin Hao happy, but Boss's eyes are really sharp. He casually bought a maid, and now her realm is higher than mine. To the side, Yi Shuihan was so ashamed that he wanted to find a hole to hide in. Xing Er's strength had already reached Master 4 stars, 2 stars higher than Yi Shuihan's. This girl was a monster, just like Boss. So this girl is Qin Hao's maid. Interesting. When Qin Hao comes back, let him bring you to Qiangbin. Don't waste your bones. Yao Lao looked at Xing Er a few more times, and then looked at Ouyang Hong. He nodded with a smile, and the two turned into light and left. This Xing Er, she was really not simple. If he guessed correctly, she had the body of a celestial immortal. Damn, I paid a high price to invite 10 mortal saints, 5 profound sages, and 1 heaven saint powerhouse to teach Miss Xing Er together. That's how she could have her current cultivation. Who was that old guy just now? How dare he steal from me, old Fourth High? Old Fourth High pointed in the direction Yao Lao left, and said with a glare, Who do you think you are? How dare you challenge Vice President Qi Yang just because you're filthy rich? Old man Huang stood out and said in a deep voice. Revered Envoy Huang, suddenly seeing Old Man Huang, Hai Laosi was shocked. The two of them were not strangers. The reason why the Hai family trading company could establish itself in the imperial city was not only because of Hai Fei Zi's own ability, but also because someone took care of her background. Old Man Huang was Yi Longyuan's trusted aide, and he had private dealings with Old Fourth Hai. Immediately, he almost exposed the other party's true identity. However, in the next second, he was immediately shocked by Old Man Huang's words. That ordinary-looking old fellow who had wanted to snatch Xing away just now was actually Red Sun's elusive vice president. Old Fourth Hai's heart was about to burst. Old Fourth Hai, you guys chat first. If you have time, come and have a drink with this old man. After intimidating the other party, Old Fourth Hai left with his hands behind his back. Okay, I'll treat you next time, Old Fourth Hai wiped the sweat off his forehead and respectfully sent off Old Man Huang. The chief messenger of Emperor Long Yuan was someone he could not afford to offend. After seeing Old Man Huang completely disappear, Old Fourth Hai let out a deep breath and looked at Yi Xuehan. He took out a piece of paper from his bosom and carefully handed it to the other party. Young Master Yi, please send this to my young master Qin Hao. Do not lose it, it's very important. This secret letter was the evidence of Mu Chuanfeng's crimes that Qin Hao had asked Old Fourth Hai to collect some time ago. It recorded all of Mu Chuanfeng's crimes. As long as it was there, Qin Hao had undoubtedly grasped Mu Chuanfeng's death door. It would be easy to kill this old bastard. Chapter 460. In the sky above Shiliang, a 50-meter-long treasure ship was flying through the clouds and fog, heading straight to the southwest. It was so fast that it left a 1,000-meter-long tail light behind it. It was like a shooting star flying across the sky with a rumbling sound. Below them, many citizens of the small countries saw the spectacular scene before their eyes. They were scared and envious at the same time. I wonder which empire's mighty figure is on the ship. Judging from the momentum, I'm afraid that some place is going to be destroyed. Every time a large ship like this flew past, it would set off a storm of blood. The commoners would also sigh repeatedly. The strong could destroy mountains and break mountains. As for the weak like them, they could only resign themselves to fate. Is everything settled? On the ship, Qin Hao opened his eyes. He was meditating in his room to recover the energy he had used during the competition. At this moment, Xiaogua walked over silently and nodded. Everything is settled. I put 50,000 Xian crystals in the engine cabin. We will arrive at the Heaven's Wall City in 3 days. He smiled comfortably. With the hundreds of thousands of low-grade Xian crystals he had won from winning second place, it would be no problem for him to fly for a month. Not to mention that Qin Hao had 100,000 mid-grade Xian crystals. Although he was still anxious, he was finally relieved. It's a pity that Sister Wanqin didn't come back with us. Xiaogua clenched his fist. This battle might be very dangerous. Because Wanqin is not here, we can't slack off. Let's go cultivate. Qin Hao waved his hand. Okay. Xiaogua turned around and left. His eyes were full of fighting spirit. This battle concerned the survival of the 6 cities. There couldn't be any mistakes. After Xiaogua left, Qin Hao was lost in thought again. He knew very well that the two of them couldn't fight against the 5 million troops of the Yuan family. But Qin Hao didn't want to use the two of them to fight against the 5 million troops. He only needed to take the heads of the enemy's commander-in-chief and general. In other words, they had to crush Yuan Huai's father and uncles in terms of strength. 1 profound sage and a dozen mortal sages? Qin Hao closed his eyes and smiled gently. Based on the information provided by Bu Xiangqin, their chances of winning this battle were quite high. Qin Hao was currently a 6-star mortal saint. Even against a 9-star mortal saint, he was unbeatable. Taking on Yuan Huai's father alone wouldn't be a problem. After Xiaogua transformed, no one would be his match except for Qin Hao and Yuan Huai's father. The crux of the matter was that the 5 million strong army was a headache. In addition, there was also the allied army of the northern martial country, the brave war country, and the Fengyue country. A motley crew was very annoying. With such a huge military force, if they were to launch a frontal assault, one wave would be enough to flatten the 6 cities of Heaven's Wall. Old demon, Qin Hao whispered. Master, I'm here. If you need anything, just tell me. If you're polite with me, I'll get angry with you. The old demon immediately replied. He was ready at any time, and his voice also came out of the spatial ring. Are you interested in fighting with 6 million troops? Qin Hao asked. 6 million. The old demon's mind was a little muddled. Thinking about the overwhelming lineup, he felt his scalp go numb. Are you afraid? Qin Hao muttered in dissatisfaction. How is that possible? It's not even enough to fill the gaps between my teeth. The old demon replied bluntly. Okay, wait for the order. After Qin Hao finished speaking, he fell silent again. The old demon was the Blood Emperor in his previous life. He cultivated the soul-devouring technique, which was very suitable for dealing with shrimp soldiers and crab generals. His soul was very weak. After coming out of the bottle, it degenerated from the dignified Emperor Yuan to a 3-star Yuan monarch, and it was still degenerating. It was only because of Qin Hao's blood essence that his soul was not destroyed. The power of the blood essence could only slow down the time it took for his soul to weaken. If he wanted the old demon to stabilize his condition, he had to find a suitable candidate as soon as possible to possess him. Even so, it shouldn't be a problem for him to devour the souls of tens of thousands of people once he appeared. At that time, the morale of the 6 million troops would be shaken, and they wouldn't have the time to attack Heaven's Wall City. It's my turn to perform. In the spatial ring, the old demon let out a lewd laugh. He was very excited. What he liked to do the most was, of course, showing off. Yes, I'm ready at any time. Master, please whip me to your heart's content. After preparing a countermeasure, Qin Hao took out an unpolished jade from the spatial ring. He lowered his head and looked at the jade in his palm, a myriad of thoughts running through his mind. This unpolished jade was a communication item left behind by Qin Yun after saving Qin Hao's parents 3 years ago. Now, Qin Hao clearly remembered that Qin Yun said that once Qin Hao's strength broke through to the sage level, he could take out the unpolished jade. Then, Qin Yun would tell him the real whereabouts of his parent. And now, Qin Hao had met the requirement. A powerful clan, a bloody battlefield. I want to see what kind of place it is. Nodding, Qin Hao gathered qi in his palm. A light flashed in his palm, and a strand of pure essence entered the unpolished jade. Wang! The unpolished jade immediately let out a hazy halo. The situation was different from the first time Qin Yun appeared. At that time, the unpolished jade shone brightly. Just as Qin Hao was feeling puzzled, 4 large words slowly appeared on the unpolished jade. Abandon Shiliang. Abandon Shiliang? Qin Hao frowned slightly. Wasn't abandoned Shiliang the capital of the great Qing dynasty 2,000 years ago? Speaking of which, Crown Prince Yongshou died there. This was the immoral deed of the old demon. What did Qin Yun mean by giving Qin Hao a signal about abandoned Shiliang? Could it be that he wants me to go to abandoned Shiliang? Qin Hao guessed and put away the unpolished jade. Since Qin Yun only told him these 4 words, the whereabouts of his parents should be related to abandoned Shiliang. After dealing with the personal army of the Yuan family, Qin Hao decided to make a trip to abandoned Shiliang. Anyway, the academy was on vacation for 2 months, and he happened to have Ouyang Hong's Emperor-grade treasure ship with him. Traveling thousands of miles was not a problem at all. You and family wait for me. I will make you regret this. Qin Hao secretly clenched his fists and entered a meditative state again. He began to breathe in and out. When he left the Fengli temple, he was just a small Yuan master who needed the care of Dan Xian and Chen Kang. Now that Qin Hao had returned and become a terrifying saint-level expert, it could be said that he had returned home in glory. And little Han, big brother Qin Hao will definitely not let you wait for too long. Saint-level expert? No, this was just the beginning. Within 2 years, Qin Hao would break through to the peak of Heavenly Saint, enter the Medicine Valley, cultivate the 9 transformations, and awaken his teacher, Dan Xian. After settling the matters in western Liang, he would go to Daliao in northern Jiang to fulfill the 5-year promise with Shao Han. Northern Jiang. Like western Liang, there were 3 powerful empires: Daliao, Northern Yan, and Northern Qi. In terms of national strength, Northern Yan was the strongest, followed by Northern Qi, and Daliao was the weakest due to years of rebellion and war. However, this was only the overall national strength. In terms of cultivation, Emperor Shao of Daliao was undoubtedly the most ferocious. He had been fighting for more than 10 years and had just stabilized the situation, so he was in high spirits. Because of this, Emperor Yan and Emperor Qi did not dare to act rashly, even though Daliao was currently the weakest. Just as Qin Hao was on his way back to Daqin Prefecture, in Daliao's imperial capital, Royal College Battle Arena. Swoosh! A sword light that was as fast as a swan suddenly flashed across the field. A luxuriously dressed student with orange light flashing on his body dodged pathetically. He rolled on the ground in an extremely unsightly manner, narrowly avoiding the sharp sword light that was coming towards him. However, the owner of the sword light had already placed the 3-foot-long sword in his hand on his neck. Chapter 461. She is indeed the beloved daughter of Emperor Shao. Her Highness Jingyue defeated me. I accept my loss wholeheartedly. The luxuriously dressed student shuddered as he felt a chill run down his spine. He hurriedly said, "His name was Yu Dakin, and he was the son of a lieutenant general in the military. He was a 5-star profound sage and was recognized as the number 1 person in the outer court. However, from this moment onward, he had fallen from first to second. Yu Dakin could not understand why Princess Jingyue, who was Emperor Zhao's most beloved and only child, was so fond of this upper-grade refined weapon. She could have gotten all kinds of divine weapons and magic instruments, but why did she have a special liking for this upper-grade refined weapon? Her Highness had been inseparable since her return. Shao Han smiled faintly and pulled the jade water sword away from Yu Dakin's neck and put it back into the sheath. She didn't show excessive joy for defeating the number 1 person in the outer court. In her eyes, there was only this sword and her longing for Qin Hao. Clap, clap. Unhurried applause sounded. Duan Ziju, whose face was like carved jade, walked forward and said with joy, "Congratulations, Your Highness Jingyue. You defeated Yu Dakin and became the strongest student in the outer court. Emperor Shao will be proud of you." "Greetings, Prince." Yu Dakin hurriedly bowed with a flustered look, afraid that he would be late. However, Duan Ziju didn't even look at him. Yu Dakin's father was only a lieutenant general, but his father was Prince Duan under Emperor Shao and was in charge of the military. Jingyue has only been back for 3 months, but she has already stepped into the 2-star profound sage realm from the origin ancestor realm. Her growth is so fast that she is worthy of being the descendant of Emperor Shao. Moreover, she defeated the 5-star profound sage Yu Dakin with the strength of a 2-star profound sage. Now, even this prince is a little afraid of you. A laughing voice sounded, full of undisguised admiration for Shao Han. While they were talking, another young man with a noble aura came to Shao Han's side. He looked at Shao Han with a fiery gaze. Anyone could see how much he liked Shao Han. The aura emitted from his body was stronger than that of the 8-star heavenly sage Duan Ziju. For a moment, Duan Ziju was very nervous. He was the second prince of northern Qi Yuan. Among the many princes, Qi Yuan was the most favored by Emperor Qi. It was very likely that he would become the next Emperor Qi. Qi Yuan is right. Little Han defeated Yu Dakin and has already proved that he has enough strength to enter the inner court. I believe that it won't be long before he can be like us and step into the inner court. Following closely behind Qi Yuan was a young man with a tall figure. His eyes were clear and bright, his thin lips and thick brows, and his jet black hair hung loosely on his shoulders. He was polite as he spoke, and he gave others an extremely amiable feeling. However, his body was faintly emitting a sharp and imposing aura that made people not dare to approach him. Even standing in front of him made people feel a sense of inferiority. After he arrived, no matter if it was his aura or appearance, he firmly suppressed Duan Ziju and Qi Yuan. It was not difficult to see that his strength was stronger than the two of them. The most important point was that Duan Ziju addressed Xiao Han as Her Highness Jingyu, even though Qi Yuan addressed her as Jingyu. Yet, this young man actually addressed Xiao Han as Xiao Han. Regarding this, the surrounding people did not dare to speak. Because he was the crown prince of northern Yen, and also the next emperor of Yen, Murong Zijuan. Greetings, Prince Qi and Crown Prince Zijuan. Yu Dakin bowed in fear. It was even faster than bowing to Duan Ziju, and it was several times more respectful. However, at this moment, whether it was Qi Yuan or Murong Zijuan, they completely ignored Yu Dakin, just like Duan Ziju. To them, Yu Dakin was just an ant. Speaking of which, little Han, your cultivation is progressing rapidly. Why are you still using such an inferior sword? It's not worthy of you. As soon as Murong Zijuan arrived, he was incomparably concerned about Xiao Han. That's right. Actually, I've long wanted to give Jingyu a suitable sword. Qi Yuan's movements were not slow at all. As soon as Murong Zijuan finished speaking, his palm flashed, and a pitch-black scabbard appeared in his hand. He did not give Murong Zijuan any chance to curry favor with Xiao Han. Jingyu, this sword was a reward given to me by Imperial Father when I helped the refugees of Daki last year. Although I feel that it's not worthy of you, and although it's only a quasi-sacred artifact and might not be worth a single coin to you, it was something that I painstakingly exchanged with military merits. I hope that you can accept it and let it accompany you day and night. It will accompany you. As he spoke, Qi Yuan handed the sword to Xiao Han and looked at her with a serious expression. His eyes were even pleading. It's only a quasi-sacred artifact. Prince Qi is giving it to our Daliao's Princess Jingyue. Could it be that you're looking down on our Daliao? At this moment, Duan Ziju took a step forward and blocked Qi Yuan with a gloomy expression. He was also cursing in his heart. Who gave you the courage, Qi Yuan, to be so close to Her Highness Jingyu? Did you ask me? Immediately, Duan Ziju's hand flashed, and a purple scabbard appeared out of thin air. He turned around, and his gloomy face immediately turned into a sunny smile. He looked at Xiao Han and said, Your Highness Jingyu, my status is much lower than Prince Qi's, and I'm not as compassionate as Prince Qi to help the refugees. However, my imperial father and I obtained this sword when we accompanied Emperor Xiao to quell the rebellion and fought bloody battles on the battlefield. Duan Ziju's face turned solemn as he said this. This sword belonged to our Daliao's former Minister of War, Kong Mingjun. The Minister of War was one of the criminals who persecuted Emperor Xiao and your imperial mother. In order to avenge your family, my imperial father killed him regardless of his life, and I took his sword. I'm sharing this honor with you. I hope that you can accept it. It's a true mid-grade sacred artifact. Duan Ziju said with unusual sincerity. In other words, this sword meant a lot to him. Tisk! Murong Zijuan sneered and pointed at Duan Ziju. I say, Prince Duan, you secretly hid a traitor's weapon. You have ulterior motives. Moreover, you even gave such an ominous item to Xiaohan. I understand. Murong Zijuan's face turned cold, and he shouted in a deep voice. Do you want Xiaohan and Kong Mingjun to end up like your father? Do you want to be a traitor too? As the crown prince, Murong Zijuan faintly had the aura of an emperor. His shout was quite imposing. In an instant, Duan Ziju was scared silly. He originally wanted to curry favor with Xiaohan, but in the end, Crown Prince Zijun, don't slander us and drive a wedge between us. Both my imperial father and I are loyal to Emperor Xiao and Her Highness Jingyu. Enough, I'm tired. Please help yourselves. Xiaohan had enough of these 3 teddy bears in heat. She turned around and prepared to leave. From the beginning to the end, she didn't even look at the 3 of them. Chapter 463. Duan Ziju's father was the warlord, second only to Emperor Xiao. He had millions of soldiers in Daliao, which was exactly what Xiaohan needed the most. Duan Ziju was quite confident in pursuing Xiaohan. Therefore, he didn't need to take Qin Hao seriously. Even if Qin Hao really came, what could he do? He was just an ant that could be killed in one move. Moreover, Qin Hao definitely wouldn't come. On the other hand, Prince Qi Yuan and Murong Zijuan were Duan Juezi's strongest opponents. Thinking of this, he turned around and looked at Yu Dakan. He smiled faintly and said, I heard that the outer court has a 2-month-long vacation, right? Your Highness, it is indeed a vacation. Yu Dakan bowed and replied. Then, how about you do something for me? Duan Ziju looked at Yu Dakan with deep meaning, as if there was a hidden meaning in his words. Yu Dakan's heart trembled. As the son of an official, how could he not understand what the other party was thinking? He must be asking him to go to Jiang Kingdom to get rid of Qin Hao. Just now, Duan Juezi deliberately used Qin Hao to provoke Murong Zijuan and Qi Yuan. If the 3 of them attacked at the same time, Qin Hao wouldn't be able to survive even if he had 10,000 lives. Understood. I am willing to serve you, Your Highness. Yu Dakan sympathized with Qin Hao, but he had to nod and agree. He didn't dare to be enemies with Duan Ziju. I will definitely satisfy Your Highness. Clean and neat, without leaving any traces. Yu Dakan promised again, and secretly made a throat-slitting gesture. No, no, no. I think you misunderstood. Qin Hao is already so pitiful. How can I let you kill him? My conscience will be disturbed if I do that. Duan Ziju also smiled, revealing a sinister smile. This? Yu Dakan was stunned and a little confused. If he didn't kill Qin Hao, could it be that he was going to save him? But this didn't seem like Duan Ziju's style. Set off immediately today. Take my order and go to the Warlord Manor to get my mount, the Raging Flame Rock. Then, head straight to the Jiang country. He is quite famous in the Jiang country. It won't be hard to find him. Then, tell him that Prince Qi and Crown Prince Zijun are sending people to kill him. Tell him to be careful. After that, you can return. What Duan Ziju said next shocked Yu Dakan even more. But after thinking about it carefully, he suddenly realized, could it be that the Crown Prince wants to borrow the hands of Prince Qi and Crown Prince Zijun? Yu Dakan paused for a moment. His next words were obvious. You are very smart. Duan Ziju took out a command medallion and tossed it to Yu Dakan. He said with admiration, That's right. I purposely let the 2 of them find trouble with Qin Hao. Then, I'll find a suitable opportunity to secretly leak it to Princess Jingyue and let her know how despicable Prince Qi and Murong Zijuan are. However, I will tell Princess Jingyue 1 month after your departure. Duan Ziju chuckled. At that time, even if Xiaohan wanted to save him, it would be too late. Qin Hao would have already become a ghost under Qi Yuan and Murong Zijuan's blade. The more Yu Dakan heard, the more shocked he was. Duan Ziju's plan of killing 3 birds with 1 stone was simply too ruthless. It was too vicious. Firstly, he would win the favor of Princess Xiaohan. Secondly, he would make Princess Xiaohan hate Prince Qi and Crown Prince Zijun. Most importantly, he would borrow the hands of others to get rid of Qin Hao, this great threat. Vicious. Truly vicious. Duan Ziju was truly a hungry wolf that couldn't be tamed. This subordinate will set off immediately. Although Udakan felt disdain, he didn't dare to disobey. He took the command medallion and prepared to head to the Warlord Manor. Wait. If you dare to leak the slightest bit of this matter? Do you know the consequences? After Duan Ziju finished speaking, he suddenly stomped on the ground. With a loud bang, the ground cracked. His intention was very clear. If Udakan was leaked, then the Yu clan would be like the ground. Duan Ziju only needed to lightly stomp on the ground to crush him. This subordinate understands. Udakan's forehead was covered in cold sweat as he rushed out without stopping. Hee, you wanna fight with me? You 2 little princes are still too inexperienced. A sinister light flashed in Duan Ziju's eyes, and he also disappeared into thin air. This time, he would definitely make it difficult for Qin Hao to escape from this calamity. 2 days later, Qin Hao and Xiaogua steered the treasured ship. They were already not far from the Jiang Empire's border. After teasing each other, the 2 of them had recovered to their peak state. At this moment, they stood on the ship and looked down. The towering mountains in front of them were so familiar. Big brother, we are almost there. Xiaogua's voice was a little nervous as he stared down without blinking. He was afraid that if they were late, the ground would be covered with corpses. He was even more afraid that those corpses were the people he was most familiar with. Don't worry, Miss Xiangchen's information is absolutely reliable. According to the time calculation, with the Yuan family's marching speed, they will at most reach the Jiang Empire's hinterland. We won't be late, Qin Hao said calmly, but in his heart, he was also a little anxious. He wished he could grow 10 wings and fly to his 4th uncle immediately. For some reason, at this moment, the corners of Qin Hao's eyes suddenly twitched. He felt an inexplicable sense of danger. However, this sense of danger was not caused by the Yuan family. It came very strangely. Big brother, what's wrong? Xiaogua saw that Qin Hao's face was sweating. The battle was about to break out, and they still had to rely on their big brother to fight against the enemy's general. Nothing must happen now. Don't worry, maybe I didn't rest well. Qin Hao casually found an excuse and patted Xiaogua's shoulder to calm him down. However, Qin Hao frowned again. His intuition had always been accurate. This sense of danger was definitely not unfounded. Then, who was preparing to make a move against them? Shaking his head, Qin Hao shook his head. Saving people was the most important thing now. At this moment, they had completely stepped into the territory of the Jiang kingdom. Looking down, there was billowing smoke everywhere. Corpses were strewn all over the ground, and blood flowed like rivers. A living hell of a ruined country appeared in front of the 2 of them. Even if they were flying high in the sky, they could still smell it from 10,000 meters away. The smell of blood below. 50 miles north of Heaven's Wall City, the Crimson Peak Canyon. The Crimson Peak Mountain was 8,000 meters tall. There was a crack in the middle of the mountain. If one looked carefully, this crack seemed to have been cut open by a knife. This crack also ran through the entire mountain, dividing the Crimson Peak Mountain into 2, forming a thin line. This thin line was the canyon of the Crimson Peak Mountain. This place originally belonged to the Jiang Empire. As Qin Hao had exchanged 20 big cities for 6 small cities in the south of the Jiang Empire during the martial arts competition, the Crimson Peak Canyon became the boundary between the Jiang Empire and the Daqin Prefecture. At this moment, in the canyon, there was a city wall that was 300 feet tall. This city wall was originally not there, but now it had risen from the ground. It was very spectacular. Moreover, it was not an ordinary city wall. It was obviously much taller than the other city walls. Then, the wall had been filled with molten iron, which made the already solid city wall even more solid. It was like a complete iron lump, impregnable. On the city wall there was a black mass of soldiers. It was like a vast sea, crowded and unbearable. Behind the city wall, there were all kinds of war weapons piled up. Slings, crossbows, and throwing spears that were shining with cold light. All of them were exceptionally fierce, giving people a suffocating sense of oppression. Reporting to Governor and State Preceptor Chun, the Sky Dragon Army and the allied forces of the 4 countries have begun to enter the canyon. Chapter 464. The soldiers knew how powerful the Tianlong Kingdom was, and they also knew that there was a huge gap between the 2 armies. In this battle, the great Qin mansion was destined to perish. However, there was no fear on his face. On the contrary, there was excitement and excitement. In fact, he wasn't the only one. The millions of great Qin mansion's men on the city walls all had the same attitude, as if they were facing death with equanimity. In order to survive, in order to fight for the last hope for their children, they were ready to die in battle. On the platform on the city wall, an old man with white hair and a white beard waved his hand, and the city gate opened. The young soldiers were let in, and the gate was closed again. It also meant that a bloody battle was about to begin. I am so sorry, Master Qin. The Qin family has dragged the Fengli Temple down. The old man who was called Lord by the young soldiers was the old leader of the Qin family. He was Qin Hao's grandfather, Qin Shilong. Qin Hao was still studying at the Scarlet Sun Martial Institution, and the position of the institution head couldn't be left empty. He had braced himself and accepted this responsibility. He originally wanted to wait for Qin Hao to return from his studies before passing the position to him. Who knew that a disaster would happen? Qin Hao had killed the only grandson of the Grand Duke of the Tianlong Kingdom, the only heir of the Yuan family. Now, the news of the 6 million-strong army coming for revenge had already spread like wildfire. In just a few minutes, they had conquered the most fortified city in the Jiang Kingdom. Then, in 4 days, they had conquered the entire Jiang Kingdom. Facing such an overwhelming force, Jiang Wang had thought about surrendering. Yuan Huai's father, Yuan Yi, had also agreed to do so. However, as soon as Jiang Wang walked out of the city, he was killed by Yuan Yi. The purpose of the Yuan family was as clear as day. Anyone who was related to Qin Hao, even if they had the slightest connection, would die without a burial place. Therefore, after this battle, no one in the Daqin prefecture would be left alive. Since you call me State Preceptor Chun, why do you say that I'm a burden? Chun Kang, who was dressed in a purple robe and had a handsome face, spoke with a smile. He didn't seem nervous at all. Qin Hao was a disciple of Fengli Temple and had saved his daughter's life. On the day that Daqin Prefecture was established, the Fengli Temple was made the state religion. This was a great honor. Chun Kang felt that his life was worth it. The only fly in the ointment was that he hadn't had his fill of being the state preceptor. Look at all the soldiers in the city. Which one of them is afraid of being implicated by you? There are 6 castellans in Jiangnan, a total of 700,000 generals and soldiers, more than 50 sects, large and small, and including the 200,000 private army that your Qin family has just established. There are more than 1 million soldiers who are willing to put their lives and everything on the line for Daqin Prefecture. Our future generations are fighting for the sake of our descendants. Who can say who has implicated who? Chun Kang said calmly, but his words were so moving. That's right, old prefecture master. Don't say sorry to us. Beat them up. Even if we die, we have to do something big before we die. Let our lives shine for the last time, so that we won't have lived in vain. We can't be like the useless emperor of the Jiang Kingdom, who was tricked into surrendering and being torn apart by 5 horses. As long as our young prefecture master is still alive, he will avenge us. Our eldest senior brother killed the young patriarch of the Yuan family as soon as he entered Qiangbin. Ha ha ha, who else has the same strength and courage? We are proud of our eldest senior brother. The crowd around the commander's platform burst into cheers, full of fighting spirit. Especially Tiger Cliff and the sword warrior from Fengli Temple. They were so excited that they howled as if they had gone crazy. Thank you everyone! At this moment, Qin Shilong was very touched. He had never thought that Daqin Prefecture, which had been established for less than half a year, would be so united. Speaking of which, these people admired his omnipotent grandson the most. It was a pity that when the war was imminent, his grandson was far away in Luoshui and had no idea what was going on. Qin Shilong's only regret in life was that he couldn't see Qin Hao for the last time before he died. Father! At this time, Qin Laosi, who was also wearing armor, winked at Qin Shilong and pointed at a fat middle-aged man in the crowd. Qin Shilong nodded and went to Haidafu to persuade him. Prime Minister, your identity is special, and your life is more precious than ours. You'd better leave. After Daqin Prefecture was established, Haidafu naturally became the Prime Minister. In fact, he had always been the one who did his best to assist Qin Shilong. He recommended one strategy after another for Daqin Prefecture to prosper. He managed Qin Hao's territory in an orderly manner and made it prosper day by day. However, Hai Feizi was a member of the Merchant Alliance. Moreover, he had more money than he could spend. He really didn't want to die. At this moment, Haidafu was struggling in his heart. A trace of fear of death flashed in his eyes, but it was only for a moment. He immediately regained his composure, took a deep breath and said, I will beat the drum for the last time for the soldiers. As long as there is one person alive, as long as there is one breath left, as long as there is still one breath left, my drum will not stop beating. He would fight with everyone until the last moment, until the last drop of blood, before he chose to leave. Daqin Prefecture contained too much of his efforts. He had invested a lot of money, so he really couldn't bear to part with it. Then, he would accompany everyone on their last journey. It could be considered as repaying Qin Hao's kindness. Moreover, if he wanted to leave, no one would dare to stop him. Even the 6 million soldiers of the Yuan family wouldn't dare to stop him for half a step, because he was one of the 12 great counselors of the Western Liang Merchant Alliance. Okay. Qin Shilong's blood boiled when he heard this. He was full of heroism. With a swish, he pulled out the big knife at his waist. This deadly Yama's knife was given to him by Qin Hao. He liked it very much. Holding the weapon left by his grandson in his hand, Qin Shilong's heart was filled with excitement. He glanced at the millions of soldiers in front of him, gathered his internal qi and shouted loudly, Everyone, old man won't say any more emotional words. What awaits us is an unprecedentedly difficult and bloody battle. On the other side of the valley, there are 3 kingdoms and 3 kingdoms. There are 3 countries and 1 empire with a total military strength of 6 million, which is 6 times more than ours. Let me ask you, are you afraid? No. No! No. On the city wall, the long spears pierced the sky like a forest. The deafening response rolled out. The soldiers shouted crazily, and the big axes were thirsty for blood. Very good. After this battle, even if we lose, this battle will definitely become famous throughout the ages and be praised by future generations. When future generations mention us, they will say that we are heroes and not cowards. We are not only fighting for the land under our feet, but also for our families, for our children, and for our aged parents. We have nowhere to retreat. Behind the exploding flame city is the exploding flame mountain range. You all know how terrifying that place is. Are we going to let the bastards of the four-nation coalition force our children and parents to feed the ferocious beasts in the exploding flame mountain range? Qin Shilong suddenly raised the pitch of his voice as he shouted. Absolutely not. Fight! 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 The warriors' eyes turned red when they heard this. At this moment, it was as if they had transformed into hungry wolves, howling incessantly. Are you willing to kill the enemy with me? Qin Shilong raised the knife in his hand. Kill! 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 Chapter 465. After the shouts, the canyon became quiet. Following that, an even more oppressive atmosphere brewed, becoming more and more oppressive, suffocating everyone. The soldiers could clearly feel that the city wall beneath their feet was shaking, and the ground in front of the city gate was jumping up and down. Even the stone walls of the canyon were covered with fine stones that were rolling down. They knew that this was caused by countless footsteps landing on the ground. The enemy was getting closer and closer. Not long after, a black mass of people slowly came into view from the opposite side. Even if one stood on the city wall that was 300 feet high and looked down, it was a sea of people with no end in sight, like a vast ocean. The first to bear the brunt was a large flag that stood tall, with the word Yuan written on it. Then, the soldiers of Daqin Prefecture saw the second, third, and fourth royal flags. They were Beiwu, Yongzhan, and Fengyu. As for the row of generals riding war horses in front of the enemy, they were all extremely valiant. Their bodies were filled with murderous intent, and their auras were terrifyingly strong. The soldiers could feel that any one of them was probably even stronger than the most powerful state preceptor Chen in Daqin Prefecture. There were more than 20 of such terrifying enemies. This was an astonishing battle strength. What made the soldiers even more fearful was that there was an especially outstanding warhorse in front of this group of enemy generals. No, that was not a warhorse, but a demonic beast. It was an Xian beast comparable to a Yuanzong elite, and it was slowly approaching. It had a single horn on its head, thick limbs, and pitch-black fur all over its body. It was a black jade unicorn. At this moment, although the soldiers on the city wall did not retreat, their legs were trembling. They were afraid that this black jade unicorn alone would be enough to smash their city gate. Riding on the back of the unicorn was an exceptionally tall and valiant general. His entire body was covered in thick and heavy black armor. This person's body was extremely broad, and his height was not inferior to the Great Qin Mansion's #1 general, Qi Daxiong, or General Qi. The soldiers understood that this was a ruthless person who was even more ferocious than Qi Daxiong. He was definitely a cold and merciless killing machine. The reason why he was said to be more ferocious than Qi Daxiong was because he gave off the feeling of a god of death. Looking at the endless number of enemies, the row of valiant generals, and the grim reaper riding on the back of the unicorn, even Chern Kang and the drunkard were so nervous that their palms were sweating. Interesting. The tall man on the horn raised his hand above his head. Immediately, the advancing alliance army stopped. The middle-aged man's lips curled into a contemptuous smile. According to the Yuan family's information, there shouldn't be any city defenses here. But now, so many people had been set up in advance. From a visual estimate, there were no less than 1 million people. Presumably, this wall was built by Qin Hao's family day and night when they were attacking the Jiang kingdom. This surprised the tall man. However, trying to stop a profound sage like Yuan Yi with a garbage city wall was simply wishful thinking. F***ck so high? The Beiwu Emperor, Wu Yingxiong, who was following behind Yuan Yi, was shocked. He had never seen such a tall city wall before. It was at least 100 meters tall, and it was filled with molten iron, making it as hard as iron. If they were to really attack, who knew how many of them would die? Perhaps even the power of an entire country would be destroyed. Everyone knew that to attack a city, one would need to have at least 3 times the number of soldiers. Not only Wu Yingxiong, but also the Yongzhan Emperor and the Fengyu Emperor's faces twisted. The three of you are so useless. It's just a small mud wall. In front of me, Yuan Yi, I can flatten it with one sword. Sensing the shock of the three emperors behind him, Yuan Yi reprimanded them without holding back. Inwardly, he despised them. Wu Yingxiong, these three dog emperors did not have the aura of an emperor at all. We are too weak. As long as General Yuan is here, there is no city that cannot be broken. Wu Yingxiong wiped his sweat after being reprimanded. He did not dare to show any dissatisfaction, and even started to flatter him. What was he worried about? After all, it was the Yuan family who wanted to take revenge on Qin Hao. So, of course, they would have to send their own troops as the vanguard. Oi, you three! Go and talk to my brother. Tell the people of the Qin family to get their asses out here. Then, we can consider letting their descendants go. Right then, Yuan Huai's uncle, Yuan Lang, rode out from the group, pointing at Wu Yingxiong and the other two with a dark face. He saw that the city wall was indeed too tall. Even if the elite troops of the Yuan family were to attack it, they would suffer a great loss. Of course, if his brother Yuan Yi were to attack it himself, he would be able to cut down the wall with one sword attack. But, the problem was that if he were to do that, Qin Hao's family would be killed as well. How could he let the people of the Qin family die in such a comfortable way? He had to keep them alive, and then torture the people of the Qin family to death. They had to go through 108 different kinds of torture before they could vent the hatred in Yuan Lang and Yuan Ye's hearts. It was actually Yuan Ye's idea as well. Gulp! Wu Yingxiong and the other two warriors swallowed their saliva. They did not dare to disobey, so they rode their horses forward. The closer they got, the more nervous they became. This city wall was indeed too tall. It was like an ancient beast, and there were a lot of warriors of the Daqin prefecture standing on top of it. If they were to shoot arrows randomly, Wu Yingxiong and the other two warriors would be turned into porcupines on the spot. Archers! Right then, as Wu Yingxiong and the other two got closer, someone on top of the city wall shouted as expected. The voice was extremely loud. It was Qi Daxiong, who was 2 meters tall. He was now the chief commander of the Daqin prefecture, as well as the general. He did not care about his own life anymore. He stood on top of the battlements and raised his arm. Swoosh! Hundreds of thousands of strong bows were pulled open at the same time. The shiny arrowheads were aimed at Wu Yingxiong. The three felt their scalps go numb. Brothers, don't shoot. Don't be nervous. We don't mean any harm. Wu Yingxiong said. F***CKU. Why would you bring so many people if you don't mean any harm? Do you think I am a 3-year-old kid? Go eat shit. Qi Daxiong pointed at the city wall and laughed. Therefore, the explosive flame army next to him, which was the former Furious Bear mercenary group of the explosive flame city, took the lead and laughed. Even the millions of soldiers on the city wall laughed. Were the three emperors sent by monkeys to make fun of them? Were they here to drink tea and chat? Malabar! Yuan Lang could not stand it anymore. He rode his horse and rushed over. Wu Yingxiong and the other two emperors were too shameful and cowardly. Hey, you trash on the city wall, I am Yuan Lang, your ancestor. Open the city gate quickly and come out to die. I can still be merciful and let your families go. Otherwise, with one order, the iron hooves of the Yuan family will flatten your mountains and rivers, burn your fields and kill you all. Your wives, daughters, and children. Yuan Lang shouted loudly. His deep voice reverberated back and forth in the canyon, giving people a strong deterrent force. Wu Yingxiong and the other two acted according to the situation. They quickly hid behind Yuan Lang. Chapter 466. His voice was equally majestic, and it greatly boosted the morale of the soldiers of Daqin prefecture. A bunch of reckless idiots. Yuan Lang felt humiliated. His face was livid with anger. "General, I am Qin Shilong, the former governor of Daqin Prefecture. You know very well that there is no room for reconciliation between us. You don't have to waste your time trying to trick us into coming out." Qin Shilong stood on the city wall and said, "You are Qin Hao's grandfather?" Yuan Lang was anxious when he heard this. The Yuan family had already investigated Qin Hao's family thoroughly. "Since that is the case, I will give you an opportunity. Get out of the city and accept the punishment of your ancestor, Yuan Lang. Perhaps if I'm happy, I'll spare your sons' worthless lives." Yuan Lang continued to bewitch him. "Father, don't believe him." Qin Laosi shook his head at Qin Shilong. The Yuan family was two-faced. Jiang Wang was dismembered because he foolishly listened to Qin Shilong. Qin Shilong knew this as well. He sneered. "General Yuan Lang, if what you said is true, then old man is willing to die. But unfortunately, a despicable person like you has no credibility at all. So, let's fight. Our city wall and our soldiers are not decorations. Even if we lose, we will teach the Yuan family a lesson that you will never forget." "Ha ha ha," Yuan Lang laughed wildly on his horse. "You are overestimating yourselves. Just because of the small mound under your feet? You want to stop the Yuan family from slaughtering you with a bunch of useless people? You want to teach us a lesson that we will never forget? Who do you think you are? Do you have the ability to do that?" Motherf ****. Qin Lao San gnashed his teeth in anger. He hated it when others insulted the Qin family, so he wanted to use his glib tongue to scold Yuan Lang until he vomited blood. Hai Dafu waved his hand and stopped him. He walked to the edge of the city wall and shouted, "General Yuan Lang, I am Hai Dafu. As the leader of the Tianlong Kingdom, you should have heard my name from the Merchant Alliance. That's right, I am one of the 12 representatives of the Western Liang Merchant Alliance." "What? Merchant Alliance? One of the 12 representatives?" All of a sudden, all of the warriors from the Yuan family started to discuss among themselves. They looked at each other, their faces full of disbelief. It was really strange that there was such a huge creature in this godforsaken place. Moreover, Hai Dafu was on his enemy's side. This is. At the same time, the highest commander of the Yuan family, Yuan Yi, also frowned. Hai Dafu's weight was indeed not light. "Ah, it's Uncle Hai. I've heard so much about you. I wonder why Uncle Hai would lower your status to stand with a bunch of country bumpkins." Although this old Mr. Qin Shilong is known as some bullshit palace master, in my eyes, he is still a bumpkin, a lowly commoner. Sorry, I'm too direct. It's a good habit that I've cultivated since I was young, Yuan Lang said with a smile. He looked down on Qin Shilong. His words angered the soldiers of the Daqin Prefecture. Qin Shilong was the grandfather of the young governor, Qin Hao. How could he be humiliated like this? If Qin Shilong was a country bumpkin, then what were the soldiers? "General Yuan Lang, please don't hurt people with your words. Do some good for your descendants so that you don't ruin the bloodline of the Yuan family. I don't want to talk nonsense with you. I just want to ask one thing from you." Normally, Hai Feizi wouldn't take Yuan Lang seriously. But now, he had no choice but to lower his posture. After he finished speaking, he even bowed deeply to Yuan Lang. Old Six felt sorry for him. His master was so noble that even the Luoshui emperor had to be polite to him. But now, he had to bow to a rough man. "Uncle Hai, you don't have to be so polite. Your business is Little Wolf's business. Just say it," Yuan Lang replied with a smile. His eyes flashed with disdain. In fact, he had guessed what Hai Feizi wanted to say. But he still wanted to hear it from his mouth. After all, it was very honorable for a counselor of the Merchant Union to beg him like a dog. "I want to ask you to let the Daqin Prefecture live. For this, I'm willing to give you 200 million mysterious crystals, 20 million earth crystals, and a low-grade sky crystal." Hai Feizi bent over from beginning to end. Because he was too fat, he was sweating profusely in a short moment. But for Qin Hao's family, he didn't care about bending over and begging. Even if he was asked to kneel, he would agree without hesitation. It was all because of the 500,000 taels of gold that Qin Hao had given him. When everyone abandoned Haidafu, only Qin Hao was willing to do everything to help. Qin Hao didn't abandon him, and he wouldn't abandon Qin Hao's family. Thump, thump, thump. At this moment, the sound of a strong heartbeat suddenly came from the field. Maybe ordinary soldiers didn't know what mysterious crystals and earth crystals meant. But the generals of the Yuan family knew better than anyone else. That was a huge fortune and also a huge treasure trove. Mysterious crystals were not only the currency between the empires, but also the necessary cultivation gem for practitioners. God! 200 million mysterious crystals and 20 million earth crystals. How many great warriors could be created? How many peerless geniuses could be raised for the family? To put it bluntly, the crystals that Haidafu threw out could double the power of the whole row of generals. Not to mention that piece of sky crystal. Only the royal family deserved to have sky crystal. Even the trashiest piece of low-grade heaven crystal was enough to create a peak heavenly saint expert. The things that Haidafu promised could be said to be full of temptation. Even Yuan Lang's big brother, Yuan Yi, felt his heart beating uncontrollably. The scene froze for a moment. Everyone was stunned. However, the stillness did not last for long. Soon after, it was greeted by a wild laughter that soared into the sky. Ha ha! Mr. Hai, you are indeed one of the 12 great counselors of the Merchant Union. You are so rich that you can compete with a country. If the Yuan family has your help, the Sky Dragon Kingdom will surpass the Great Wei and the Great Zhao within 10 years. And in 20 years, it will surpass the Luoshui Emperor. As he was talking, Yuan Yi rode on his unicorn and slowly walked forward. Every step the unicorn took brought up a gust of sand on the ground. It couldn't hide Yuan Ye's murderous aura. Sir, are you the leader of the Yuan family, the #1 warrior of the Sky Dragon Kingdom, the Sky Treasure General Yuan Yi? Hai Feizi struggled to lift his head and look down. However, he still couldn't lift his back. He was so tired that his whole body was aching. Mr. Hai, you have good eyes. I am indeed Yi. Yuan Yi held his fists together and complimented lightly. His face was full of friendliness. Chapter 467. How dare you! The sixth head was enraged. No one had ever dared to talk to their master like this. He waved his hand and a beam of yuan qi shot out. This beam of green yuan qi shot out 1,000 meters like an arrow, piercing through the air and attacking Yuan Yi. The sixth head was a 6-star yuan master, and could be counted as a powerful warrior in Daqin Prefecture. The soldiers on the city wall could not help but cheer. Boom! This beam of yuan qi landed on Yuan Ye's chest accurately. He got it! The soldiers were overjoyed. However, in the end, this seemingly powerful beam of green light turned into smoke and disappeared the moment it made contact with Yuan Yi. Yuan Yi was sitting on the unicorn, as steady as a mountain. He was not hurt at all. He did not even bother to use his defense. The sixth head, a 6-star yuan master, could not even break his armor with his full power. There was not even a scratch on the armor. Boom! Everyone in Daqin Prefecture felt like they had just been struck by lightning. Their faces were filled with shock. How powerful was this? All of a sudden, the sixth head's face turned pale. Chen Kang and the drunkard, who were standing right next to him, were shocked to the extreme. Hee. Yuan Yi waved his hand in front of his chest, looking calm and relaxed. A cold smile appeared on the corner of his mouth as he looked at the sixth brother and said, "Since you are Master Hai's servant, I will forgive your rudeness and spare your worthless life. But this is the only time I will do it. General Yuan, are you not going to give me any face?" Hai Dafu yelled helplessly. Yuan Yi kept a cold face and did not respond. 200 million Xian crystals, 20 million earth crystals, and 1 low-rank sky crystal stone. Are you still not going to give me a chance? Hai Dafu was about to lose all hope. Such a huge fortune was actually way beyond his limit. He had to borrow from the other representatives in the merchant union in order to get it all together. However, even if he were to lose everything, this Yuan Yi would not give him anything. Brother! Yuan Lang glanced at Yuan Yi with greed in his eyes. He was tempted. Leader! Great General! Please reconsider and prioritize your family. The 20 powerful warriors behind Yuan Yi said at the same time, hoping that Yuan Yi would consider it carefully. All troops, prepare for battle. After 3 orders, launch the attack. Anyone who dares to say anything else will be killed without mercy. Yuan Yi gritted his teeth and growled in a deep voice. He was telling everyone with his actions. There was no room for negotiation. The Qin family had to be exterminated. General Yuan, do you really want me to kneel down and beg you? Hai Dafu was so anxious that he was sweating profusely. Once the enemy attacked, the Daqin prefecture would definitely meet its end. He would have no face-to-face Qin Hao in the future. Even if you kneel down and call me father, my determination to slaughter the entire Qin family will not be shaken. I will give you one last chance. Get out of my sight in 3 breaths of time. Otherwise, you will die. Yuan Yi screamed. Apparently, he had reached his limit. Good. Very good. Very good. At this point, Hai Dafu had tried his best. He finally straightened his bent waist and pointed at Yuan Yi with a cold face. You can kill everyone in the Qin family and flatten our Tianming 6 cities. But, I have to remind you, do not wait until Qin Hao graduates from the Red Sun Academy and destroys your entire Yuan family. Because, by then, it will be too late for you to regret. Ha ha ha. Yuan Yi was riding on his unicorn, laughing crazily. When he heard the name Qin Hao, his eyes were about to bleed. He gritted his teeth and said, I am the Sky Treasure General Yuan Yi. Why would I be scared of a little kid? Qin Hao is just a piece of trash. He is hiding in the Luo Shui and does not dare to show his face. If he dares to show up in front of me right now, I will cut him into pieces. However, he cannot do anything to me. In my eyes, he is just an ant. Just you wait. After I destroy all of you, the next one will be that little bastard Qin Hao. And it will not be long. I will cut off all of your heads today and send them to Qiangbin tomorrow. Once Qin Hao is lured out. Yuan Yi licked his lips and said, even the master of Qiangbin could not save his life. My son Yuan Huai, rest in peace. I will send your enemies to hell to apologize to you. Despicable. On the city wall, Qin Shilong gritted his teeth. He was so angry that his body was shaking. Although he could not even save himself, he was still worried about his grandson's safety. Cut the crap. Are we going to fight or not? You want to cut off my head? Come and try if you can. Let's see if I can twist your head off first. Qi Daxiong roared with a muffled voice. Yuan Lang, prepare for battle. Capture all of the Qin family people alive and use them as sacrifices for my son. Yuan Yi did not want to waste any more time. He turned his horse around and headed back. He wanted to see the soldiers of the Yuan family topple the city wall of the Qin family with his own eyes. He wanted to see Qin Shilong and his people kneel in front of him and beg for his mercy. Oi! You 3 lead the way. Once Yuan Yi left, Yuan Lang pointed at Wu Yingxiong and the other 2 emperors. What? We lead the way? Why? This time, the 3 of them were stunned. I want you to be my cannon fodder. Why? Do you want to be killed by me? Or do you want to destroy this city wall? It's up to you. Yuan Lang laughed evilly as he slowly took out his battle sword. He stared at the 3 emperors with an unfriendly look. These 3 despicable bastards. After conquering the Jiang kingdom, they had divided all the cities. How could they take advantage of the Yuan family so easily? Now you have to fight even if you don't want to. And I heard that your son, Wu Jintao, was killed by Qin Hao, right? Now it's time for you to take your revenge. And you too. When Qin Hao participated in the Four Kingdom martial arts competition, he had screwed you all over. He even killed the geniuses of your kingdom. Don't you have any guts? TSK. Trash. Yuan Lang spat a mouthful of phlegm onto Wu Yingxiong's face. This time Wu Yingxiong was enraged. His face started to twitch violently. However, he was not angry at Yuan Lang. He was angry at Qin Hao. During the Four Kingdom martial arts competition, Qin Hao had crushed their ancestral heavenly martial armor into a pile of scrap metal. His son, Wu Jintao, was crushed to death inside the armor like a tortoise, and the number 2 genius of the northern Wu kingdom, Long Aotian, was also killed by Qin Hao. This was an irreconcilable grudge. Soldiers of the northern Wu kingdom, listen up. Attack. Soldiers of the valiant kingdom, listen up. Charge. Soldiers of the Fengyue kingdom, run to your heart's content. The 3 emperors pulled out their swords and raised them to the front, shouting at the same time. Boom! Immediately, the 3 brigades broke away from the alliance camp in the canyon. Like 3 sharp blades, they stabbed at the steel city wall in front of them. The canyon was less than 3 miles wide, but it was squeezed into a vast ocean by them. The valiant kingdom, the northern Wu kingdom, and the Fengyue kingdom had a combined force of more than 1 million soldiers. The momentum they brought was also overwhelming. Archers, get ready. Crossbowmen, get ready. Catapults. On the city wall, Qi Daxiong, who was dressed in mighty armor, raised his arm and gave the order to defend. In an instant, the big bows were pulled into a full moon. The catapults at the back were also tightened. Roar! 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 The entire canyon echoed with the hot-blooded roars of the soldiers on both sides. 1,000 meters, 800 meters, 700 meters. He was getting closer and closer. 500 meters, 400 meters, entering the shooting range. Chapter 468. Swoosh. Swoosh. At this moment, the sky in the canyon darkened. The rain of arrows blotted out the sky and flew like locusts, biting into the siege troops below. Heart-wrenching screams suddenly reverberated. After the first wave of arrows, more than 30,000 soldiers of the coalition army fell to the ground. They were shot into hedgehogs and died in front of the city. Hai Dafu had been preparing his troops. Daqin Prefecture's arrows were all made of stainless steel. These low-level soldiers of Beiwu were only wearing leather armor. How could they block the arrows made of stainless steel? Moreover, there were simply too many allied armies, and they filled the canyon. As such, the Great Qin Palace's archers didn't even need to aim and were able to shoot accurately. In fact, some of the better ones were even able to kill 2 people with a single arrow. Shield bearers. Seeing this, a general of Beiwu suddenly waved his hand. Swoosh. The light infantrymen attacking the city at the front immediately separated. A group of strong soldiers wearing heavy iron armor rushed out from the rear. Each soldier was carrying a huge round shield with a radius of 1 meter. Fengyue country and Valiant War country did the same. In an instant, under the cover of these strong heavy infantrymen, the light infantrymen shrank under their shields and launched another attack. At this moment, the second and third waves of arrows from Daqin Prefecture flew over. As soon as they came into contact with each other, clanging sounds could be heard. Countless sparks could be seen on the densely packed shields below. The arrows were blocked and could not be effective. Although they shot down many enemies through some gaps, their lethality was far less than the first wave. These heavy infantrymen were like a group of turtles wearing a turtle shell. Although they crawled slowly, they approached step by step, creating a strong pressure on the soldiers of Daqin Prefecture. Good timing! Chen Kang shouted. He had been waiting for this moment. With a wave of his hand, a ball of light appeared in his palm. He shouted, "Leaders and elders of the 6 cities of Tianming, watch us!" Ha ha ha! On the city wall, about 200 white-bearded elders laughed. They were all Yuan masters. Their average strength was around 5 stars. They were the most powerful force in Daqin Prefecture. Following closely behind Chen Kang, this group of elders increased their primordial qi. He gathered all his primordial qi into Chen Kang's palm. Suddenly, the light between Chen Kang's palms became even brighter, causing the entire canyon to tremble. "Rise!" Chen Kang clenched his teeth and raised his hands above his head. 1,000 meters away, a thick earthen wall suddenly rose from the middle of the battlefield. It forcefully broke the formation of the siege troops, causing all the heavy infantry to die in front of the city. Moreover, it prevented their rear from being able to support them. The front and rear could not connect. "Fire, crossbowmen!" Qi Daxiong was so excited that he screamed and ordered again. "What?" A general from the northern Wu nation who was leading the siege was shocked. At this moment, the 4th wave of arrows flew from the top of the city wall. This time, every arrowhead shot by the soldiers of Daqin Prefecture was wrapped in kerosene. As a result, the sky was filled with fiery light. It was so dazzling that people couldn't open their eyes. Waves of heat rolled over and over. It was also at this moment that these fire arrows fell into the enemy's formation. Before Yuan Yi arrived, Chen Kang had ordered his men to scatter fire powder in front of the city wall. The range was just right, covering 600 meters. It was also where these heavy infantry soldiers were going to land. There was a loud bang. A sea of fire rose from the ground and swallowed the 40,000 soldiers in an instant. The smell of burning immediately spread out, followed by heart-wrenching screams. "Retreat! Retreat!" This general from the northern Wu nation was so scared that his face was drained of all color. Before the fire arrows landed, he had already dodged to the back. When he turned his head around, he was already in complete despair. An earthen wall appeared out of nowhere in front of him. It was 60 meters tall and extremely thick. In just a short moment, it had completely blocked off their escape route. Oh my God! In front of the city, the fire was raging. Behind them, there was no way out. This group of northern Wu nation's most elite heavy infantry soldiers, also known as the Iron Army that Wu Yingxiong had spent a lot of money to build, welcomed their doomsday. Plus, this was their first time on the battlefield. How sad was that? Chen Kang, F***ck your ancestors. Seeing this from afar, Wu Yingxiong's heart was bleeding. He could not even sit still and fell off the back of his horse. After landing on the ground, he was so angry that he vomited blood. "Reinforcements! Hurry up and send reinforcements! We have to save them!" Wu Yingxiong pulled a general next to him and yelled. The person leading the attack on the city was his nephew. He was also the bloodline of the northern Wu royal family. "Send reinforcements!" This general did not dare to disobey. He immediately waved his hand and ordered the rest of the troops to break down that earthen wall in the middle of the valley. The Brave Nation and Fengyue Nation's movements were not any slower than theirs. Among the troops attacking the city, there were also important military officers. Therefore, another large group of soldiers yelled and charged over. "Catapults! Throw them!" On the city wall, Qi Daxiong ordered again. Then, he threw down his raised arm. One. A sound that caused one's scalp to go numb sounded out. Following this, countless bluestones flew out from behind the town walls and flew over the great Qin palace's soldiers' heads. They drew a parabola in the air as they fell towards the Allied army's reinforcements 1,000 meters away. The catapults made by Daqin Prefecture were made of slabs. The weakest one was the tendon of a 4th-level ferocious beast, the yak. They had a very long range and were extremely accurate. Each stone thrown out weighed at least 1,000 kilograms. For such a huge rock to fall from such a high altitude, the impact of the impact was quite terrifying. Martial artists in the body-tempering realm had no chance of survival. Coincidentally, there were no Gathering Yuan realm soldiers among them. Almost all of them were in the body-tempering realm. Bang! 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 Huge stones fell one after another. The reinforcements of Northern Wu Nation, Brave Nation, and Fengyue Nation were smashed into meat pies before they could run over. The huge stones even crushed the bodies of the soldiers deep into the sand. Blood was squeezed out and dyed the ground red. The sound of bones cracking could be heard continuously. Almost all of the reinforcements of more than 100,000 soldiers were killed. Puff, puff, puff. Wu Xiong and the other two emperors could not help but vomit blood again. Their vision turned black and they fainted on the battlefield. They had fought in wars all their lives but had never suffered such a huge defeat. Moreover, it was a loss. Their soldiers had not even touched the city wall of Daqing Prefecture, and almost 200,000 of them had died. That was a full 1/5 of the coalition army. Of course, this number was a drop in the ocean for the coalition army of 6 million. It was not worth mentioning. The key was that there was not even a single casualty on the side of Daqing Prefecture. Chen Kang, don't be so arrogant. Watch as the old man comes to capture you. With a whoosh, an old man flew out of the army of Northern Wu Nation and flew towards the city wall like a giant rock. He was the leader of the number 1 sect of Northern Wu Nation, Celestial Martial Sect. He was also Long Aotian's master, the ancestor of Celestial Martial Sect. And me. Then, another person flew out. Chapter 469. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Countless figures chased after the two of them and flew over the city walls of Daqing Prefecture. These people were the leaders and elders of the 3 nations, and there were about 300 of them. In the face of Chen Kang and this group of powerful Yuanzi, there must be someone equally powerful to be able to restrain them. In an instant, the sky was filled with flashes of light as a huge battle broke out between the experts. Chen Kang leaped up and charged toward Patriarch Tianwu. The two of them exchanged a palm strike in the air. With a bang, Patriarch Tianwu was sent flying. How is this possible? You actually... Patriarch Tianwu spat out blood as he fell to the ground. His face was filled with fear. It had only been half a year since they last met, but he could not even block one move from Chen Kang. Sorry, I've advanced from a 9-star Yuan master to a Yuan ancestor. Back off. Chen Kang floated in the air in front of the city. He no longer hid his strength. A ball of blue Yuan Qi was released from his body. With a wave of his hand, he sent about 50 to 60 Yuan practitioners who were charging toward him flying. It was a crushing blow. Don't be arrogant. Take this. At that moment, the Sky Pillar Sect's Rui Iron Cudgel smashed toward Chen Kang's head while he was catching his breath. Get out of my way. How could the drunkard let the Sky Pillar Sect get what he wanted? He swung the wine gourd at his waist. With a clang, it collided with the Sky Pillar Sect's cudgel. Sparks flew everywhere as the cudgel was bent by the wine gourd and smashed onto the Sky Pillar Sect's head. Ah! The Sky Pillar Sect screamed and threw away the cudgel in his hand. He covered his face with both hands as blood flowed through the gaps between his fingers, blurring his vision. He accidentally fell into the sea of fire in front of the city. Even though he was a 9-star Yuan master, he did not have time to struggle before he was burned alive. This scene was extremely shocking. It did not matter if you were a soldier or a general. Even if you were a high and mighty sect leader, once you fell into a sea of people, you would be completely useless. If you were not burned to death, you would be trampled to death by the frenzied soldiers. The other people who had rushed over to help also hurriedly flew backward. Even martial ancestor Tianwu and Sky Pillar Sect leader, who were the strongest, were killed and injured in a single exchange. In all honesty, they were still weaker than martial ancestor Tianwu, so they immediately fled at the sight of him. Immediately, the 3 emperors behind were so angry that they vomited blood. Trash! Yuan Lang shouted angrily on his tall horse. With the strength of 3 countries, they couldn't even take down Qin Hao's Daqin prefecture. They were simply good-for-nothings who came out to make a fool of themselves. Qin Hao's family is not bad. With just the soldiers of 1 prefecture, he defeated 3 countries and forced them to flee. I'm afraid that Tianwu Kingdom, the Brave War Kingdom, and the Wind and Moon couple will be crippled. Yuan Lang, if you can't do it, then let us do it. Don't embarrass our Yuan clan and make our nephew look down on you in the underworld. Ah! Behind him came the mocking laughter of countless generals. Yuan Lang was even more furious. At the same time, he carefully looked back and realized that his big brother Yuan Ye's face was so dark that it was scary. Yuan Lang gritted his teeth and decided to do it himself. He roared as he stomped on the back of his horse. His muscular body flew into the air as he raised his battle sword and slashed towards Chen Kang's head. The blue light shining from his body was a few times more intense than Chen Kang's. Chen Kang was just a 2-star Great Origin ancestor. However, Yuan Lang was an 8-star Great Origin ancestor. Die! A beam of sword light slashed over. The sword was as wide as a palm, and it seemed like it could tear the earth apart. Chen Kang was shocked as he hurriedly dodged. However, he had just defeated martial ancestor Tianwu and the 50 to 60 elders and sect leader. His Yuan Qi could not keep up with his thoughts, and his speed had already slowed down. Watch out! While he was in a difficult situation, the drunkard jumped over and pushed Chen Kang away with both of his hands. The sword slashed down and chopped off both of the drunkard's arms. He could not help but cry out in pain. Master! Drunkard sect leader! Uncle Jiu! The drunkard's disciple, Log, Qin Shilong, Chen Kang, and the rest were shocked. Just a hair's breadth away from cleaving the drunkard in half. Ha ha ha, a bunch of trash ants. Take my sword again! Yuan Lang laughed maniacally as if he had entered an unstoppable state. After he finished speaking, he swung his sword again and slashed mercilessly at the drunkard's waist. Be *starred, I will fight it out with you! Chen Kang shouted in grief and indignation. A light flashed in his palm as he took out a sword to block the attack. In the end, he was forced to fall from the sky by Yuan Lang. The ferocious sword qi attacked his body, turning his internal organs into mush. Together with the drunkard, they both smashed onto the city wall. Chen Kang's face suddenly turned pale. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood onto the ground. The drunkard that he had risked his life to save from Yuan Lang's sword had already lost both of his arms and fainted at the side. Yuan Lang, good job. We will help you. Mixed elements / wind breaking / 5 fierce generals from the Yuan family's army galloped out on their horses. They lined up and slashed forward at the same time. The 5-sword qi converged into one in the middle and turned into a 30-meter-long sword light. It slashed onto the earth wall that Chen Kang and more than 200 people had formed. With one hit, the earth wall collapsed and disappeared, revealing an open space in front of the Allied army. However, the 30-meter-long sword qi did not dissipate. It smashed onto the iron wall of Daqin Prefecture. Clang! There was an ear-piercing explosion. The 30-meter-tall iron wall was hit by the sword qi. All of a sudden, the ground under the soldiers' feet started to shake violently. They could not even stand still. One could see with naked eyes that a 3-meter-deep dent appeared on the front of the iron wall. The dent was surrounded by spider webs, which made it look like it was about to collapse. Shoo! All of the soldiers who saw it gasped. How powerful was that sword qi? Even the iron wall that was made of tempered rock was about to be shattered by it. With such a powerful sword chi, how many attacks could the city wall take? Plus, the enemy had only sent out 5 people. That Yuan Yi, whose power was unpredictable, had not even made a move yet. Right then, all of the warriors from Daqin Prefecture were filled with despair. However, they had nowhere to run. Too weak. On the contrary, Yuan Yi was not satisfied with the result of that sword chi. He kept shaking his head and said, "Do you guys have nothing better to do? Do you guys only know how to flirt and sleep with women? 5 mortal saints, and you guys can't even cut open a small pile of dirt. You are a disgrace to my name. Legion Commander, this is the biggest mistake I've ever made." Hearing him, the 5 warriors in the front felt extremely ashamed. They were scared of Yuan Ye's words. The 5 of them exchanged a look. A ferocious light shone out of their eyes like that of wild beasts. They lifted up the swords in their hands again. Shoo! Another 5 beams of sword chi sliced through the air. They formed into a beam of sword light midway. This beam of sword light was even more powerful than the previous one. It was 50 meters long and extremely sharp. It had used up all of the power of the 5 mortal saints. With a whistling sound, it landed heavily on the iron wall of Daqin Prefecture. Furthermore, it landed on that dent. Chapter 470. Qi Daxiong wanted to dodge, but it was already too late. Boom, boom, boom. It was deafening, as if the sky and the earth were collapsing. As the sword slashed through, the iron wall was shattered. Countless rocks shot out from the wall and into the sky. Qi Daxiong's vision was in a mess as he was engulfed by the huge rocks falling from the sky. Billowing smoke rippled out and spread across half of the canyon. When the smoke dissipated, the battlefield was still. Looking around, the city wall was in a mess. The iron wall had been broken into a couple of pieces. It was so broken that it had almost turned into ruins. The ruins were covered with the corpses of the Great Qin Mansion's soldiers. More than 20% of the soldiers had been crushed to death, and most of them had been vaporized by the powerful sword chi, leaving not even a single strand of hair behind. All in all, it was tragic. Extremely tragic. Blood was smeared all over the rock. Colorful intestines and brains were scattered all over the place. Some of the wounded soldiers who were lucky enough to survive were holding onto their broken legs, screaming in agony. It was like hell on earth. Tsk tisk. Looking at the tragedy in front of him, Yuan Yi was riding on the back of his unicorn. He clicked his tongue and said with a fake compassion, "So cruel, so bloody. I told you that this small pile of rocks would not be able to withstand a single hit." Qin Hao's family members were still so stupid, thinking that they were safe. "I am sorry, General. Did we go too far?" One of the warriors who had shot out the sword chi quickly got off his horse and crawled to Yuan Ye's mount. He was so scared that his whole body was shaking. The reason why they did not use all of their power in the first attack was because they did not want to cause this kind of damage. If they killed Qin Hao's family members, Yuan Yi would not be able to find anyone to take revenge on, who would be able to calm him down. Therefore, at this moment, this warrior was so scared that he could not help but feel scared. Yuan Yi did not say anything. He was still smiling. His smile was so bright, but it was so cold. He slowly reached out his hand, leaned forward slightly, and sucked in the air toward the family's valiant general kneeling on the ground. Swoosh! That warrior's head was ripped off from his body, and his head flew up into the sky. How cruel! This scene had frightened the other 4 warriors. It was also right then that some noises came from the direction of the ruins. Countless wounded soldiers of Daqin Prefecture crawled up from the piles of stones. Although they were covered in blood, they didn't seem to be seriously injured. Furthermore, there were quite a few of them. "Father, father, how are you?" Qin Laoxi's face was covered with blood as he dragged the dying Qin Shilong out of the ruins. It was too dangerous just now, as if doomsday had arrived. Fortunately, the 200 or so sect leaders and elders of Daqin Prefecture risked their lives to form a defensive shield to protect this group of high-level officials. However, the group of sect masters and elders, they were all torn apart by the sword Qi. "Master, master, wake up!" Log's face was covered in tears as he hugged the drunkard who had lost both his arms. Other than Tsiogwa, the drunkard was his only family, like an old father. "I cough cough. Kang, fight, fight, fight." The drunkard woke up from his daze and opened his weak eyes. The first thing he said was to fight. Chun Kang, who was dressed in a purple robe, was now in tatters. His hair was disheveled, and he was seriously injured. He could not even stand steadily. He looked at the messy battlefield and smiled bitterly. The city was broken. Perhaps this was the last time in his life that he would wield his sword. He could not help but think of his daughter. He was very glad that Wan Qin and Qin Hao were still in the Luoshui Empire. Trembling, he raised his sword and faced the countless coalition forces. Qin Kang shouted, "Kill! Kill!" Another shout sounded. Qin Shilong trembled as he got up. The armor on his back was smashed by a boulder, and his internal organs were obviously damaged. However, he held the Yama saber with both hands and murmured Qin Hao's name. His eyes were bloodshot, but he was still full of fighting spirit. "Good grandson, you must practice hard and avenge your grandfather in the future." At this time, the elder of Tang Mansion also stood up with a smile on his face. Qin Hao told him to take care of his body and strive to live for 2 more years. In the future, he would witness Qin Hao's greater glory and achievements. Unfortunately, he was afraid that he would not be able to hold on. But he would not regret it until he died. Because at this moment, Qin Hao's achievements were already glorious enough for him. He had killed the young master of the Yuan family, and brought 6 million people to fight against him. Who else could have such glory besides Qin Hao? Yoho, on the other side, Yuan Yi was planning to kill the other 4 as well. However, when he saw that all the senior members of the Qin family were still alive, he could not help but laugh. He waved his hand and said coldly, "Capture them alive! Go! Capture them alive! Reward them handsomely!" This time, the entire coalition forces went crazy. 6 million people started to run like a bunch of lunatics, laughing and running towards the wounded warriors of Daqin Prefecture. In their eyes, Qin Shilong and the elder of Tang Mansion were the most beautiful women in the world. They were so excited that they were about to go crazy. The ones who ran the fastest were Yuan Lang and the 4 warriors. They had to capture the Qin family alive to appease Yuan Ye's anger. "Where are the warriors of Beiwu country? Let's go!" Wu Yingxiong, who was about to die from anger, suddenly jumped up from the ground. It was like he had just eaten a heavenly elixir, and he was full of energy again. The wall of the Qin family was broken, and it was the best chance for him to take his revenge. The Yongzhan Emperor and the Fengyu Emperor were not slow either. They ran forward with their swords in hand like normal soldiers. Dong! 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 All of a sudden, a heavy drumming sound was heard from the Daqin Prefecture's camp. The drumming sound was very tragic, but it seemed to have a magical power that awakened the warriors' fighting spirit. Chen Kang turned around and saw Haidafu with his arms bared. He was holding the hammer with both of his hands and slamming it on the leather drum. While he was slamming it, his eyes were filled with tears. Under Haidafu's feet was the body of the 6th elder. At that moment, a huge rock had fallen down. The old man had protected Haidafu. Even so, Haidafu's left leg was still pierced by a broken piece of stone. Blood flowed from the wound and covered his entire leg. Dong! 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 The drumming was still ongoing. More and more Daqin Prefecture's soldiers gathered together. Their eyes were dim, but they were still holding on to their long spears. "Are the warriors of Daqin Prefecture still here?" Qin Shilong pushed away Qin Laosi, who was holding on to him. "Sir, we are willing to fight. We are willing to fight! We are willing to fight! The earth-shattering sound waves were heard. Right then, the Allied army was only 500 meters away from them. Kill them! Qin Shilong took the lead and led the charge. Kill! The head elder of the Tang family followed. Qin family's army kill! Qin Laosan shouted. Motherf *Ker, I'm not dead yet. Furious Bear Brigade of Exploding Flame City. Charge! Qi Daxiong, who was covered in blood, shook his head and crawled out from the pile of rocks. He let out a hoarse howl. Like a shooting star, he was the first to crash into the Allied army. He swung the mace in his hand and smashed the head of an unlucky guy. Ha ha! Chen Kang laughed. Are the disciples of Fengli Temple still here? Fight for senior brother! Fight for senior brother! Fight for senior brother! Chapter 471. The blood Kirin pursed her lips and shook her head in agony as she watched the battle unfold. She was in charge of the catapults, and she had an iron wall in front of her. That was why she hadn't suffered any casualties when the sword came crashing down on her. Now that the city had been breached and the two armies were fighting each other, her catapults were no longer useful. I once asked you if you would come back. You didn't hesitate to say yes. The blood Kirin stood where she was, thinking about how Qin Hao had left. She smiled sadly and said, But when will you come back? If you don't come back soon, you will never see us again. Qin Hao, come back! Tears streamed down her cheeks as she prayed for a miracle. She watched as the remaining soldiers of Daqin Prefecture came into contact with the Allied army. Tens of thousands of them died under the enemy's blade, and the number was growing by the minute. Chen Kang was covered in wounds as he was attacked by hundreds of Kiliarchs. Qi Daxiong looked like he was fighting the most valiantly, but his armor was almost flattened by the enemy commander's heavy hammer. Blood flowed freely from Qi Daxiong's mouth. He was like a father who had just lost his child. All he knew was how to do was swing his mace endlessly. Sister, sure, my brother will come back. That's my intuition. Now, it's our turn to fight for Daqin Prefecture. Qin Yu quietly pulled out the sword at his waist. For Daqin Prefecture. The scimitar in Zhuo Junchen's hand shone with a cold light. Kill! The blood Kirin roared and led the charge toward the battlefield. Behind them were the servants of the Tang and Qin manors, as well as a young boy who wasn't even 14 years old. This was the last fighting force of Daqin Prefecture. They were the only fighting force left. Just as Haidafu had said, they would fight to the last man, until the last drop of blood was spilled. Dong, 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 the war drums were still beating, full of sorrow. With every sound, countless Daqin Prefecture soldiers fell to the ground in tatters. Beside them, without exception, there were at least 2 or 3 coalition soldiers. They had killed enough. At this moment, Yuan Lang finally arrived in front of Qin Shilong and laughed excitedly like a devil. Ha ha ha, you old man, you finally fell into my hands, kneel down for me. He deliberately did not kill Qin Shilong. Instead, he prepared to use his essence qi to make the old Qin Shilong kneel in front of him in front of everyone. You dare? Protect the old manor head. When the remaining 8 elders of Fengli Temple saw this, their eyes widened and they rushed over to save them. However, Yuan Lang casually threw out a punch, and easily sent the 8 elders flying and vomiting blood. Our blood won't be shed in vain. Bastard, just you wait. When my Hao-er returns, you'll pay with your blood. Qin Shilong said with grief and indignation. Then ask him to come back. I can't wait for him to show up. Not to mention a mere Qin Hao, even if God comes today, he won't be able to save the Qin family. Hurry up and kneel under my crotch. Yuan Lang roared and hit Qin Shilong's knee with the back of his sword. This battle was about to end. Making Qin Shilong kneel was just the beginning of the torture. Whoever was the enemy of the Yuan family would die a horrible death. However, as soon as he made his move, buzz, a thunderous sound suddenly rang out in the sky. The sound was extremely loud, as if it came from a very far place. However, it shook the entire canyon, causing the soldiers who were fighting fiercely to involuntarily drop their weapons and cover their ears. What's going on? Is there thunder in the sky? Almost instinctively, everyone raised their heads and looked up. At a glance, they saw a huge ship floating above their head. Oh my God! What kind of ship is this? It's so big and it can fly? It was 50 meters long, like a dark cloud pressing down on everyone's heads, making them panic. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. While everyone was still in a daze, thousands of sword rays suddenly flew out from the ship, making the sky extremely bright. It was like a meteor shower that only appeared once in 100 years. The thousands of sword rays drew beautiful arcs and fell into the army of the Yuan family. Boom, 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 the earth shook and the mountains shook. The mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. In an instant, the thousands of sword rays exploded in the army of the Yuan family. Each sword ray killed about 200 to 300 people. After the thousands of sword rays, there were no more than 200,000 people left. Only deep, smoking craters were left on the ground. What was more terrifying was that 3 of the sword rays seemed to be controlled by someone. They flew toward the peak of Crimson Peak and cut off half of the peak. Half of the peak collapsed into the canyon, completely blocking the rear furnace of the Yuan family. The power of the sword rays was terrifying. The entire battlefield was shocked. Yuan Lang was immediately scared out of his wit. Which senior is passing by? Why did you attack the soldiers of the Yuan family? Why do you care about the conflicts of this mortal world? Yuan Yi, who had been calm from the beginning to the end, hurriedly got down from his horse and shouted at the treasure ship in a humble manner. How could he not recognize such a noble flying magical item? Only the top figures of the 3 empires were qualified to own one. Furthermore, judging from the power of those sword rays, the one who attacked him on the ship had the power to threaten his life. To be honest, Yuan Yi could also use thousands of sword rays. However, in terms of perfect control, he was not as good as the one on the ship. Therefore, right now, his attitude was extremely respectful. The strong should be respected and revered by others. Crimson Sun, Qin Hao. A calm voice was heard. It was only 4 words. When these 4 words fell into the ears of Yuan Lang and Yuan Yi, it was like a bolt of lightning that struck them, stunning them. Hower! Qin Shilong could not believe it. My grandson is back? The head elder of the Tang family could not believe it either. It's our head disciple? How is this possible? Tiger Cliff and the sword warrior exchanged a look. They could see the disbelief in each other's eyes. Qin Hao should still be in Qiyang University. Plus, even if he was back, the ship he had brought with him was way too shocking. Tiger Cliff and the sword warrior were both disciples of a small sect. They had never seen the Luoshui Empire before. Therefore, they were shocked. However, right then, 2 figures fell down from the ship in the sky. Boom! Boom! They were standing in the middle of the battlefield. They were standing right in front of Qin Shilong and Qi Daxiong. Everyone from Daqin Prefecture took a closer look. Their noses twitched, and they could not help but burst into tears. They could not be more familiar with these 2 figures. Even if they died, they would never forget them. It was indeed Qin Hao and Xiaogua. They were back. Grandson. Hao head disciple. Brother. Little Gua, is that really you? My child. Everyone was crying. At this moment they had forgotten about life and death. They had even forgotten that they were on a battlefield. All they had was excitement. However, Qin Hao and Xiaogua did not turn around. They stood there coldly. Their eyes were filled with murderous intent as they stared at the 6 million Alliance army. You are the one who killed my nephew, Qin Hao? Chapter 472. Qin Hao didn't answer. He didn't even bother to look at Yuan Lang. At this moment, a breeze blew into the canyon and blew a strand of hair on Qin Hao's forehead. He slowly turned around and looked at the soldiers of Daqin Prefecture who were fighting a bloody battle behind him. The first thing he saw was his elderly grandfather, Qin Shilong, and his maternal grandfather, the first elder of Tang Mansion. The two old men's faces were dirty. It was obvious that they were leading the soldiers in the battle. Then Qin Hao saw Chen Kang. Chen Kang smiled at him with a pale face. It was a forced smile. Qin Hao noticed that Chen Kang's body was trembling when he smiled. It was obvious that he had suffered serious internal injuries. Then, it was the soldiers of Daqin Prefecture. When Qin Hao looked at them, every soldier was so excited that they couldn't help themselves. Their eyes were full of joy. They stood upright like javelins with their heads held high. This was the first time they had seen their young chief. Just like the rumors said, their young chief was arrogant. He was indeed a young hero. Qin Hao nodded at the soldiers of Daqin Prefecture. This small gesture almost made the soldiers cry. They knew that their young chief had acknowledged their bloody battle. Then, Qin Hao looked over the crowd and fell to the rear of Daqin Prefecture. He saw Hai Dafu, who was bare-chested and holding a drum awl. Hai Dafu was injured. There was a bull-sized wound on his leg. There was a body lying at his feet. It was old sick. At this moment, Qin Hao's heart twitched violently. He clenched his fist. But in the end, when he saw the drunkard who had lost both his arms and was on the verge of death in Yuan Mu's arms, Qin Hao's heart felt like it was about to explode. His eyes immediately burned with a monstrous rage, and an invisible flame seemed to rise from his body, shooting straight into the clouds. Only then did Qin Hao slowly turn around and stare at Yuan Lang again. "Hey, I'm asking you a question. Why are you in a daze? Are you Qin Hao or is he Qin Hao?" Yuan Lang had an overbearing and arrogant look on his face. He first pointed at Qin Hao, then at Xiaogua. He couldn't figure out who the real Qin Hao was. He felt that these two people's auras were similar. However, Yuan Lang's intuition told him that the older teenager should be the real Qin Hao. No matter if it was Qin Hao or Xiaogua, both of them didn't say a word and completely treated Yuan Lang as heir. "You know what? The people behind me are not only soldiers of Daqin Prefecture, but also people under my protection," Qin Hao said faintly. His face was calm and his tone was dignified. Yuan Lang furrowed his brows. "What do you mean? Who the hell wants to listen to your nonsense?" "And him." Qin Hao pointed at Qin Shilong. "This is my grandfather. He's old and should be enjoying life. This is my grandfather. I told him to take care of himself and strive to live for 2 more years. And you almost caused my grandfather and grandfather to lose their lives. Oh, so you're the real Qin Hao, his ancestor." Yuan Lang showed an expression of sudden realization. This time, he finally understood. But what did Qin Hao's grandfather and grandfather have to do with him? Saying these irrelevant things. Did water get into his brain? And that fatty over there, his name is Haidafu. He's my friend despite our age difference. He doesn't have the slightest bit of strength, but he saved the Qin family several times. But you guys hurt him and even killed the 6th brother. The 6th brother helped me a lot. He even protected the pharmacy of the Qin family in the middle of the night. Speaking up to this point, Yuan Qi started to vibrate around Qin Hao's body. The sand under his feet turned into a whirlwind. "You little bastard! What are you talking about? Who cares about your soldiers, your grandfather, and your grandfather? In my eyes they are worthless **t. I don't even know what the 6th brother is. But today you can't escape." Yuan Lang yelled loudly. The palm-sized battle sword in his hand was waving crazily in front of Qin Hao's face. It seemed like it would pierce through Qin Hao's face at any time. However, he needed Yuan Ye's order to do that. Yeah, you guys don't care about my soldiers, my grandfather, and my grandfather. You don't even know who the sixth brother is. But I do care, and what's even more annoying is. Creak. Qin Hao clenched his fists, lowered his head, and said while gritting his teeth, "The drunkard is my teacher's life. If he dies, my teacher will die as well. But today, you guys cut off the drunkard's arms, and hurt my people, my family, my seniors, and my teacher right in front of me. All of them. All of them are the people I care about the most. This is unforgivable. I want you guys from the Yuan family. Not a single one of you can run away." Ha ha. Qin Hao, oh Qin Hao, Yuan Lang, thought that you were some kind of peerless genius, but it turns out that you are just an idiot. Look at the people in front of you. There are 6 million of them. My nephew died in vain. Yuan Lang raised his head and yelled. He felt that Yuan Huai's death was not worth it. He thought that Qin Hao was just bragging, and that he was not taking the Yuan family seriously at all. 6 million people, and not a single one of them can run away? Bah! You don't have the ability to do that. Aren't you afraid of biting your own tongue? Qin Hao had been hiding in the Luoshui Empire. In fact, the Yuan family really couldn't do anything to him for the time being. But today, he had come back without a care in the world. He even boasted shamelessly in front of Yuan Lang and behaved atrociously everywhere. Fine, fine, fine. I should have killed you with my sword, but since you're an idiot, I'll spare your rotten life for now. Get your ass in front of my big brother, kowtow 10,000 times, and lie down for me. Yuan Lang shouted and used his sword to hit Qin Hao's legs. Get lost. Almost as soon as Yuan Lang's hand moved, Qin Hao suddenly raised his head and let out an incomparably powerful roar. This roar was like a tsunami, and it landed heavily on Yuan Lang's chest. Bang! Yuan Lang's majestic body, which was almost 2 meters tall, flew upside down. In midair, his armor was shattered, and even the combat sword in his hand was shattered into pieces. After landing on the ground, he was completely covered in blood. There was a fist-sized flesh hole in his chest, and all the internal organs inside were smashed. Yuan Lang's eyes widened in disbelief. He used all his strength to point at Qin Hao, but before he could raise his hand, he died and went to the netherworld. Boom! This scene shocked everyone. The general of the Yuan family's vanguard is dead. That guy seriously injured Imperial Preceptor Qin with a sword and also cut off Senior Drunkard's arms. In the end, he was roared to death by the young master's domineering roar. The soldiers of Daqin Prefecture were dumbfounded. After a long time, deafening cheers suddenly rang out. The slogan, "The young master is mighty," spread throughout the battlefield, shaking the canyon. Don't be arrogant, thief. I, Pan Feng, will take your worthless life. A warrior from the Yuan family rode his horse out of the troop, holding a battle-axe in his hand. He came with an aggressive aura and threw out a head-on attack, aiming at Qin Hao's head. Chapter 473. Pan Feng urged his horse to gallop forward. His aura was impressive. His battle-axe was shining brightly. No wonder he was called a fierce general. Unfortunately, a 2-star mortal saint was not even worthy of carrying Qin Hao's shoes. Qin Hao did not even bother to look at him. He raised his hand and swung it forward. Whoosh! An orange light shot out from his fingertip. With a poochie sound, it turned into a ray of light and pierced through Pan Feng's chest. Pan Feng did not even have time to scream before he fell off his horse and died. Everyone was shocked again. He had killed a sacred-level elite with one strike. The Yuan family's fierce generals were extremely powerful. To the soldiers of Daqin Prefecture, each of them was a nightmare. Just now, there were 5 people like Pan Feng who destroyed the iron wall that everyone had painstakingly built for 4 days and 4 nights with a single sword strike. Now, they could not even withstand a single finger from the young mansion master. Trash! Qin Hao put down his arm and spat on the ground. How dare you! How arrogant! How arrogant! How dare you be so rude to our Yuan family? How dare you! In an instant, the entire row of fierce generals was enraged by Qin Hao's actions. However, they were not stupid. Although they were angry, no one dared to step forward. Everyone, don't panic. I have a man named Lu Sandao under my command. He has the courage to fight against 10,000 men. He is good at using the green dragon saber. He will take Qin Hao's life in 3 strikes. At this time, a fat middle-aged general shouted. He was the 3rd Division commander of the Yuan family. He patted his chest and said confidently, "Everyone, calm down. Generals, please calm down and watch me kill Qin Hao." As he spoke, a muscular man walked out from the 3rd Division commander's camp. The muscular man was bare-chested. He held a 5-foot green dragon saber in his hand. It looked heavy. He immediately mounted his horse and was ready to fight with Qin Hao. "Men, let's give Lu Sandao a lift." The 3rd Division commander waved his hand and ordered a soldier to bring a cup of hot wine to boost Lu Sandao's courage. "No need. I'll kill Qin Hao after watching Wenjiu. Giddy up." Lu Sandao suddenly squeezed the horse's belly with his legs and rushed forward with his saber in hand. His body was wrapped in a strong yuan qi. As soon as he made his move, he revealed his cultivation base as a 3-star mortal saint. Compared to Pan Feng, she was indeed much stronger. Qin Hao won't be able to keep his life this time. Not to mention 3 strikes, I don't think he can even block 1 strike. Speaking of which, 3rd Division Commander, when did you take in a madman like Lu Sandao? Amazing! Ha ha, you flatter me. This Lu Sandao used to be a butcher. One day, I went out to buy groceries and accidentally bumped into him. We hit it off at first sight, so I accepted him into the army. I'm going to focus on training him and make him my lieutenant in the future. The 3rd Regiment commander said proudly. Lu Sandao was indeed a talent. This showed that the 3rd Regiment commander had a good eye for heroes. Plop! A muffled sound of something landing on the ground suddenly rang out. The generals who were praising Lu Sandao were shocked and quickly looked in the direction of the sound. They realized that Lu Sandao, who had been sent to kill Qin Hao, had died. What a piece of trash! Qin Hao flicked his fingers and dispersed the yuan qi at his fingertip. He hadn't even used 30% of his power, and this madman Lu Sandao had already gone to hell to drink with Pan Feng. How is this possible? A 3-star mortal saint couldn't even block a single strike from Qin Hao. The 20 warriors of the Yuan family all changed their expressions. Right now, they no longer dared to underestimate Qin Hao in their eyes. They had thought that Qin Hao was just a student of Qiyang, so his strength wouldn't be that high. When Yuan Huai left, he was only a 1-star mortal ancestor. Since Qin Hao could kill Yuan Huai, he was probably a 5-star mortal ancestor. A 5-star mortal ancestor was Qin Hao's limit. This was already the highest evaluation that the generals had given him. Logically speaking, an 8-star mortal ancestor like Yuan Lang should have been able to kill him effortlessly. But in the end, Qin Hao had killed Yuan Lang with a roar. With a flick of his finger, he had killed Pan Feng, a 2-star mortal saint. Then, he had killed Lu Sandao. For the first time, Qin Hao had given these generals a taste of fear. Gulp! They swallowed their saliva in unison and looked at each other. It seems that the sword light that flew out of the ship was most likely sent by Qin Hao. I thought that the sword light was sent by the child beside Qin Hao, but it seems that I was wrong. Brothers, Qin Hao is too strong. I'm afraid that one of us won't be able to take him down. Who's willing to fight him with me? Someone suggested. It was the commander of the 3rd Division. I, Huingjun, am willing. So am I, Zhang Dishuai. Immediately, 2 people stood out. Great. The commander of the 3rd Division was confident. Although he wasn't a match for Qin Hao alone, the combined strength of the three of them was definitely unimaginable. For example, when they had broken through the iron wall earlier, they had gathered the strength of 5 mortal saints. In the eyes of the 3rd Division's commander, Qin Hao was like a persimmon that could be crushed at will. Today let me, Jia Xiaosa, lead Hu Yingjun and Zhang Deshuai to fight Qin Hao and compose a song of 3 heroes. Brothers, follow me. The commander of the 3rd Division, Jia Xiaosa, roared and galloped out on his horse. Kill! Kill! Hu Yingjun and Zhang Deshuai chased after him. The 3 of them rode on their horses like a gust of wind. They advanced in a triangular formation, leaving a trail of smoke behind them. At this moment, they were actually using the military's tactics tacitly. However, in Qin Hao's eyes, the 3 of them were still good-looking but useless. Swoosh! A 3-foot silver sword appeared in Qin Hao's hand. He simply swung it. This sword was extremely fast. This sword was extremely accurate. This sword was also extremely vicious. Slash! 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 The sound of flesh being cut was heard. Before Jia Xiaosa, Hu Yingjun, and Zhang Deshuai could reach Qin Hao, they fell to the ground with a thud and became corpses. Without exception, there was a scarlet line of blood on their neck. This line of blood had almost cut through their entire neck. Qin Hao had taken 3 lives with a single slash of his sword. Hiss! The soldiers of Daqin Prefecture were terrified and felt their hair stand on end. Even Chen Kang, who had always been calm, lost his composure at this moment. His eyes were wide open and his mouth could be stuffed with a steamed bun. Powerful. Too powerful. Killing sages like killing dogs. In just half a year, Qin Hao had grown to such a terrifying level. The way Chen Kang looked at Qin Hao had completely changed. There was a faint sense of reverence in his eyes. It was a reverence that came from the bottom of his heart. Who else? Qin Hao pointed the tip of his sword at the ground and said coldly. In front of him lay the corpses of Yuan Lang, Pan Feng, Lu Sandao, and the 3 division commanders. At this moment, Qin Hao's voice was not loud, but it scared the fierce generals of the Yuan family and made them retreat. They doubted whether Qin Hao was a human or a devil. Thinking of Lu Sandao's words, this group of fierce generals felt as if countless big slaps were slapping them in the face. What about taking Qin Hao's dog life within 3 slashes? What about killing Qin Hao with warm wine? 3 heroes fighting Qin Hao? What about composing a **T war song? He didn't even touch Qin Hao's clothes. He didn't even run up to Qin Hao. Chapter 474. Clap, clap. Yuan Yi clapped his hands as he walked out. With only one person, you have forced all 6 million of my men to not step forward. No wonder you are the top student of Qiyang. My son being defeated by you is not a shame at all. The reason why Yuan Yi did not do anything, and even ignored Yuan Lang's death, was that he was observing Qin Hao's power in the dark. Especially that 1,000 beams of sword qi, which Yuan Yi had to treat seriously. And now, he had figured it out. Your cultivation should be around the 6-star mortal saint level, no more than 8-star. Yuan Yi sneered. What? 6-star mortal saint? No wonder we could not even block one attack from him. So he is this powerful. These words shocked all the warriors of the Yuan family. From the looks of it, Qin Hao had only spent a couple of months from killing Yuan Huai to becoming a 6-star mortal saint. His speed of growth was monstrous. Qin Shilong clutched his chest as he was so shocked that he could hardly breathe. Was this really his grandson? When Qin Hao was still in the Qin clan, he was a piece of trash in the eyes of all the clansmen. Even the maids and servants in the mansion didn't put him in their eyes. The entire east courtyard was ruined and desolate. Ever since Xiao Han used his own body to save Qin Hao, no one could stop him from rising. And now, in just a couple of months, he had reached the saint level. Before, the Jiang country did not even have a Yuan zone, but his grandson was already a saint-level warrior. Besides being shocked, Qin Shilong was also full of pride. He had brought honor to his ancestors. If his ancestors knew about this, they would be so excited that they would climb out of their coffins. However, with your weak cultivation, in my eyes, you are still like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. It is no different from seeking death. Yuan Yi continued. His voice was full of disdain for Qin Hao, and he was full of confidence. He had this confidence because he was a profound saint who was above the mortal saint level. Yuan Huai's father. Yuan Yi? Qin Hao said with a low voice. Yes, that's right. Yuan Yi nodded arrogantly. Creak. Qin Hao clenched his fists tightly. His hair began to flutter behind his head, and his eyes became sharper. This man was the instigator of the war. He was the executioner who made the soldiers of Daqin Prefecture bleed like a river. Hai Dafu's injury, Old Six's revenge, and Senior Drunkard's broken arms were all because of him. Qin Hao, you're about to die, and you still dare to glare at General Yuan Yi? Who gave you the courage? At this time, Wu Wingxiong stood up, trembling uncontrollably. He mustered up the courage to point at Qin Hao and bellowed. So what if Qin Hao was strong? Could he be stronger than the invincible General Yuan Yi? Why don't you kneel down and admit your mistake, destroy your own cultivation, and then let your entire family wear mourning clothes for Yuan Huai? When you wear mourning clothes, don't forget to cry Ancestor Wu Jintao 3 times, to comfort my son's soul in heaven. The more Wu Wingxiong talked, the more excited he got. In the end, he started to jump up and down in front of Qin Hao. You want me to destroy my own cultivation? You want my entire family to wear mourning clothes for Yuan Huai? Qin Hao reached out his hand and sucked Wu Wingxiong toward him, grabbing his neck. Wu Wingxiong's face and ears turned red, and he almost couldn't breathe. Qin Hao's eyes were filled with a bloody light. He leaned close to Wu Wingxiong's face and said, I forgot to tell you one thing. Everyone who asked me to kneel down is dead. Creak. With a push of his hand, he broke Wu Wingxiong's neck right in front of Yuan Yi. The Beiwu Emperor had died. His Majesty is dead. The soldiers of the Beiwu country were in a mess. Those warriors instinctively hurried to hide behind Yuan Yi as well, as they were afraid that Qin Hao would suck them in the next second. Little B**** starred. You are looking down on me. Yuan Yi, who had not made a move since the beginning, slowly took out his battle sword. It was a very heavy sword, with a row of teeth marks on the back of the sword. It looked like the teeth of a shark, giving out a vicious vibe. God knew how many people's blood it had tasted. In fact, I am not looking down on you at all. To this, Qin Hao answered coldly. Very well. Yuan Yi was so angry that he started to laugh. He glanced at the floating ship in the valley, and a flash of greed appeared in his eyes. Your flying magical item is not bad. After I kill you, I will gladly take it. Qin Hao had not only sent himself here, but also brought him a treasure. How generous! You want to take my flying magical item? Try it. After Qin Hao finished talking, his body slowly floated up into the sky. The shining orange halo was getting brighter and brighter. Yuan Yi did the same. He held the huge toothed sword in his hand and followed Qin Hao up into the sky. Both of them knew very well that the normal soldiers down there, and even the saint-level warriors, would not be able to handle the aftermath of their battle. No matter if it was the soldiers of Daqin Prefecture or the troops of the Yuan family, moving the battle to the sky was the best choice. However, be careful. Grandson Qin Shilong and the head elder of the Tang family raised their heads, looking worried. Don't worry, elders. That Yuan Yi is not enough for my brother to practice with. Now let us have some fun as well. As Qin Hao was fighting Yuan Yi, Xiaogua looked at the row of warriors in front of him and crooked his finger. Right then, Qi Daxiong's armor was still bleeding, which was why Xiaogua's eyes were extremely red. Gulp. Those warriors swallowed their saliva, feeling a bit scared. What are you afraid of? He is just a kid. We have been through a lot on the battlefield. Countless people have died under our blades. Don't you feel ashamed? Qin Hao is indeed powerful, but he is being held back by General Yuan Yi. Brothers, let's work together and destroy this kid. Immediately, someone yelled, suggesting that all the warriors work together to attack Xiaogua. In fact, that was exactly what they did. All of them roared and charged forward like thunder. Roar. However, right after that, an even more majestic roar was heard. It was like a muffled thunder rumbling in the valley. Xiaogua's body suddenly grew taller. 2 meters, 3 meters, 4 meters, 5 meters, his muscles bulged, his thighs were like pillars, and his arms were even thicker than those warriors' waists. Shoo! Shoo! 2 fangs came out of his mouth, and a sharp horn appeared on top of Xiaogua's head. In just a short moment, the kid that those warriors were talking about had turned into a ferocious giant. In the next second, screams and cries were heard in the valley. High up in the sky, 3,000 meters, 2 figures stood facing each other with swords in their hands. Floating clouds were floating around them. On their backs, a pair of transparent yuan wings were waving at the same time. At first glance, Qin Hao and Yuan Yi looked like 2 gods. Almost as soon as Xiaogua made his move, they made their moves as well. Their yuan wings suddenly shone brightly, and their speed increased drastically. The 2 turned into afterimages as they slashed at each other. Clank! A heavy attack was heard. Sparks were vibrating in the sky. It was a direct attack. After that, the 2 were both pushed back dozens of meters. However, Qin Hao was pushed back even further, and the blood qi in the palace started to boil. Obviously, he was slightly weaker than his opponent in terms of power. Chapter 475. What a joke! Being the enemy of the Yuan family is a crime worthy of death. If I were to dig your ancestors out of their graves, I would be killed by the heavens. Qin Hao mocked as he threw out dozens of sword attacks in front of him. Dozens of sword lights turned into a sword net, blocking the incoming attack. How dare you! Yuan Yi was so pissed that he almost puked out blood. His yuan qi increased once again. The sword qi in front of him was too dense, and he realized that he had underestimated Qin Hao's power. All of a sudden, his battling power was increased to the 9-star mortal saint level. That huge toothed sword then exploded with a 10-meter-long sword qi. That sword fell down from the sky, shattering Qin Hao's sword net into nothing. However, Qin Hao was not surprised at all. He did not even look surprised as he turned around and flew into the distance. Bastard, don't run! Yuan Yi flapped the wings on his back and hurried to chase after him. However, Qin Hao did not want to be his enemy. He just kept flying, his speed as fast as a shooting star. It seemed like he wanted to start a war of attrition with Yuan Yi. Ha ha! Even if you run to the end of the world, you will not be able to run away from me. Pay for my son's life. Yuan Yi, who was right behind him, did not fall behind at all. He sneered in his mind. You want to consume my yuan qi? You must be dreaming. His cultivation was higher than Qin Hao's, and his yuan qi was richer as well. He knew that Qin Hao was seeking his own death. He was so excited that he did not notice that Qin Hao's yuan qi did not show any signs of weakening at all. However, Yuan Yi was starting to feel tired. All of a sudden, Qin Hao turned around abruptly. His body shone brightly as he threw out a sword attack toward Yuan Yi's head. Great! You don't have the energy to run anymore, do you? Yuan Yi was so happy. Sweat dripped down his face as he threw out a sword attack. Chin! A muffled clashing sound was heard all of a sudden. After that attack, Qin Hao stood still in the air, while Yuan Yi felt something sweet in his throat. He opened his mouth and puked out a stream of blood. His body was like a kite with a broken string, flying backward. "How is this possible?" he said in shock. He finally felt that his power was draining at an extremely fast speed. However, Qin Hao was still as energetic as before. "Nothing is impossible. Die." Qin Hao definitely wouldn't tell him that he was using the indestructible Samsara Arts spirit control technique. Maintaining the primordial wings did not consume Qin Hao's own primordial qi, but the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. Yuan Yi was different. After flying for such a long time, the yuan qi inside his body had decreased by 30%. Therefore, this time, he showed signs of being unable to continue and was forced back by Qin Hao's sword. While shouting, Qin Hao's body surged with flames. The bright purple meteorite sword was wrapped in flames. Obviously, he had activated the raging fire sword realm and slashed down from the sky. Whoosh! A wave of fire shot towards Yuan Yi's head like lava. Sword realm. Yuan Yi was shocked. Qin Hao was even more powerful than he had expected. He had actually learned the sword realm. Even if he didn't want to admit it, he had to admit that Qin Hao was indeed much more outstanding than his son. "You want to take advantage of the fact that I've lost my primordial qi? You are wrong, Qin Hao." Yuan Yi was not in a hurry. His left hand flashed and a pellet appeared in his palm. He threw it into his mouth. All of a sudden, the weak light on his body seemed to have been stimulated. It expanded by 3 times, and was even more powerful than when he was at his peak. Saint Origin Pellet? Qin Hao frowned. He did not expect his opponent to have a Saint Origin Pellet. After taking the Saint Origin Pellet, it could immediately replenish all of the Saint Realm warriors' primordial qi. It could even increase their battling power. It seemed like this burning fire sword qi would not be able to hurt him anymore. The result was just as Qin Hao had expected. Before the lava-like wave of fire could reach Yuan Yi's head, it had been sliced in half by his primordial qi. Then, the flame turned into smoke and disappeared. "Ha ha! Brat, what else do you have? Take it all out. No one can save you today." Yuan Yi yelled out confidently. He wanted to use his absolute power to suppress Qin Hao so much that he would not be able to fight back. In the end, he would die in fear. "Oh yeah." Qin Hao curled up the corner of his lips. His left hand flashed as well, and a bead appeared in his palm. Once this bead appeared, it shone brightly. It seemed like all of the primordial qi in the world was gathering inside the bead. Holy Spirit Bead? Yuan Yi opened his eyes wide. He was shocked. According to his family's secret records, this bead was the Holy Spirit Bead that could not be bought with money. Once a Saint Realm warrior wore it, it could help Yuan Xian warriors train and increase their power to the peak level of Heaven Saint or even King Realm. The Holy Spirit Bead was extremely precious. Only the royal families of the 3 empires had it. But why did Qin Hao have the Heavenly Spirit Pearl? "This bead was given to me by Yilong Yuan, who was the champion of the 4 academies of the Luoshui Empire." Qin Hao had seen through Yuan Yi's confusion, so he explained. Damn it! Damn it! Yuan Yi was so angry that he kept clenching his teeth. Once again, Qin Hao made him have a whole new level of respect for him. He actually won the championship of the 4 great academies. If his son had not died, and if Yuan Huai had still been alive, he would have been able to participate in that sacred competition and bring glory to the family. At that time, Yuan Yi would have been so proud of himself. As he thought about this, the hatred in Yuan Yi's heart grew even stronger. "So what if you have the Holy Spirit Bead? I'm sure you've only had it for a few days. How much primordial qi can it store for you?" Was Qin Hao trying to break through temporarily with the help of the Holy Spirit Bead? In Yuan Yi's eyes, it was impossible. It was just nonsense. Taking a step back, even if Qin Hao could temporarily break through, how strong could he be? A 6-star ordinary saint could only become a 7-star ordinary saint after absorbing that thin amount of primordial qi. He would not be a match for Yuan Yi, who was a profound saint. Qin Hao would not be able to change the outcome of his death. On the contrary, this Holy Spirit bead would fall into Yuan Ye's hands. As he thought about this, the greed in Yuan Ye's eyes grew even stronger. He realized that Qin Hao had a lot of treasures on him. Whether I can break through or not, I'll prove it to you right away. Qin Hao could tell at a glance what the other party was scheming. He smiled and said, I forgot to tell you that it's true that I'm a 6-star mortal saint, but when I unleash my full strength, my strength is comparable to a 9-star mortal saint. At this time, if I break through another level, TSK. Qin Hao stopped talking and started to concentrate on extracting the primordial qi from the Holy Spirit bead in his hand. All of a sudden, the space around him seemed to be distorted. Streams of primordial qi that were visible to the naked eye started to flow into Qin Hao's palm. At the same time, Qin Hao's aura was getting stronger and stronger. It shook the space around him and made a buzzing sound. It seemed like he could really break through at any time. This scene scared Yuan Yi out of his wits. Qin Hao's meaning was clear. He was a 6-star ordinary saint, but his strength was comparable to a 9-star ordinary saint. If he broke through another level, he would be able to fight Yuan Yi, who was in the profound realm, head-on. Not good. Yuan Yi immediately realized that no matter if it was true or not, he would rather believe it. Therefore, he made his move without hesitation. A beam of sword light that was hundreds of meters long was mixed with a tornado. It swept toward Qin Hao from Yuan Yi's direction. He could not let this kid break through. Otherwise, Yuan Yi was worried that he might lose his life. Right then, almost as soon as he made his move, a beam of light shot out from Qin Hao's head. With a pop sound, it sounded like glass breaking. Qin Hao's barrier of 6-star ordinary saint was broken, and he successfully stepped into the 7-star ordinary saint level. Looking at the sword light and the tornado that was sweeping toward him, Qin Hao smiled faintly. Chapter 476. Battle Dragon Cloud Soaring Spell. After the breakthrough, he started to fight back immediately. The Battle Dragon Cloud Soaring Spell was a unique air combat skill that Qin Hao had created in his previous life. Together with the wings on his back, he could reach a horrifying speed. Vaguely, an illusory dragon-shaped creature appeared under Qin Hao's crotch. He rode on the cloud dragon and rushed out with his sword in hand, tearing apart Yuan Yi's sword light and tornado with brute force. He passed right in front of his opponent and appeared behind Yuan Yi in a flash. Yuan Yi tried his best to dodge in that critical moment. But even so, he was still half a second too slow. Swoosh! His left arm was cut off by Qin Hao's sword light, and the broken limb fell onto the battlefield below. Ah! A horrible scream was heard as Yuan Yi's right hand quickly hit his left shoulder to stop the bleeding. He turned around and stared at Qin Hao. This sword attack is for the warriors of my Diqin prefecture. Qin Hao slowly turned around, his face cold. Yuan Yi took a couple of steps back in fear. His pupils shrank. He could not believe that Qin Hao could be this fast after breaking through. And he had done it within a second. Could it be that the Heaven Spirit Pearl was full of spirit qi? Yuan family, listen up. Attack. He was not stupid. Enduring the pain in his shoulder, he shouted at the 6 million warriors below him to attack Qin Shilong. He wanted to use this to distract Qin Hao. He knew that right now, Qin Hao definitely had what it took to fight him head-on. Unfortunately, after he shouted, none of the 1 million warriors below him took half a step forward, because in front of Xiaogua, there were tons of warriors' dead bodies. Excluding the ones that were killed by Qin Hao, there were more than 15 warriors who had died in Xiaogua's hand. It was almost as Qin Hao had predicted. Besides him and Yuan Yi, no one else could beat Xiaogua's opponent. Right then, there were only 3 warriors who were still trying their best to hold on. But they would not be able to hold on for much longer. Roar. A beast's roar broke the stalemate. Although it did not lead the Yuan family's army to attack, Yuan Ye's unicorn seemed to be very intelligent as it jumped out first. As soon as it moved, the soldiers moved as well. The overwhelming scene repeated itself, and the canyon was like a vast ocean. This scene was within Qin Hao's calculations, and it was also the scene that worried him the most. The military strength of Daqin Prefecture was unable to withstand this overwhelming attack. Qin Shilong and Chun Kang immediately became very anxious. Roar. As soon as the unicorn moved, another demonic beast's roar resounded from the battlefield. A huge creature descended from the sky. Its body was as strong as a lion, and its hair was thick. It was more than 5 meters long and extremely majestic. It was Qin Hao's dog spirit. As soon as it landed, its thick dog paw smashed the unicorn's head into the mud. The unicorn's body was pushed over, and its head was crushed like a watermelon. When Qin Hao was on his way back from Luoshui, the dog spirit had leveled up again, and it was all thanks to the old demon. The oil lamp that the old demon had placed on the 13th floor of the suppressing beast tower was the blood of a beast king, which had been burning for 2,000 years. The dog spirit's sense of smell was extremely sensitive. After Qin Hao threw the lamp into his spatial ring, it immediately ate the oil. Unfortunately, after 2,000 years of consumption, the power of the Beast King's blood had been depleted. Even so, the dog spirit had still evolved into a saint beast. There was no comparison between demonic beasts and saint beasts. It had killed Yuan Ye's mount with just one slap. The dog spirit was extremely excited. It stepped on the unicorn's dead body, raised its head and cheered like a winner. It then opened its bloody mouth and curled its tongue, sucking the dead unicorn into its stomach. It even licked its tongue as if it had not had enough yet. After that, it showed its teeth and gave a weird smile, then turned around and stared at the army. It turned around and looked at the Yuan family's army. Damn! When the dog spirit looked at them, the Yuan family's soldiers were horrified. They even peed on the ground between their legs. Ha ha! Here I come. It was also right then that a cloud of bloody red gas descended from the sky, bringing with it an evil aura. Soon, tens of thousands of red lines were split out from the gas, sinking into the bodies of the Yuan family warriors in the front row. The old demon's soul-devouring art had officially begun. Once the red lines entered their bodies, the soldiers started to change. First, their eyes turned blood red, and their faces turned green. In just a short moment, they looked like a group of soulless zombies. They slowly turned their heads around. Then, they pointed their weapons at their former companions. They raised their machetes and hacked into their brother's neck. This scene was extremely terrifying and horrifying. It was as if he had been possessed by the devil. There were tens of thousands of soldiers whose souls had been devoured by the old demon like this. Therefore, within a second, the same number of Yuan family soldiers had been killed by their own brothers. They did not expect that the face in front of them would be so familiar. They were drinking and flirting with girls just yesterday, but today, he had stabbed them in the head. Damn it! Immediately, the Yuan family soldiers were in a mess. Their screams and cries were heard throughout the valley. It was too horrifying. Especially when the first batch of soldiers who had died tragically on the ground were pierced by the old demon's red lines, they staggered up from the ground. Some of them even had their necks cut off.